Today in the current undercurrent session, we are going to discuss the farm bills of 2020, various provisions of the bill, the controversy relating to the bill, and the protest. Friends, in last few days, we have been witnessing a massive level of farmers' distress in the northern India. Now, that distress is not related only to the northern India, but specifically it impacts their region a lot. But from the farmers' viewpoint, what we have to see is that what are these bills, then what is the loopholes in these bills, and then what can be the possible solutions. As you know, from the exam point of view, this is important. Now, this lecture will be divided into three sections. First one will be regarding the various provisions that we will be studying, various concepts involved into it. Then we will be studying what are the points which result into a controversy as to why this bill is so controversial and why the farmers are protesting out of it. And after that, we will try to give you a conclusion from the exam point of view. From a general viewpoint also, this bill is very important because we all know farmers in India are always under distress, and if there is certain bill or a government provisions are made, then obviously these bills will we have to discuss them in law. Specifically, there are various issues involved into this bill. This will be a very long session, minimum 1.5 hour it will take. So I expect your patience, and you try to understand a lot many things in this bill. Whenever there are certain important points, I request you to write down those points, because if you write down those points, then you will be able to recollect those points, and you will understand the topic in detail. Right now, the situation is that government is with talks with these organizations, farmers organizations, and all those things. But there are really certain very significant loopholes in the bill that is resulting into this kind of distress among the farmers. So whatever the outcome will be of that discussion, we will discuss that later once the discussions are over. But surely we are finding that the government, when it started, where the President of India gave his assent on 27th September, and now we are in December, what we are finding is the momentum of the protest is increasing. So basically, what are these bills? So there are in all three bills. Okay, there are three bills. On September 27, 2020, the President of India, obviously, Mr. Nath Kovind, gave his assent to three farm reform bills. And these bills were the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Bill of 2020. The second bill was the Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services Bill 2020. And then there was an amendment brought into the Essential Commodities Act, which is very older act. So generally we call it to be an Essential Commodities Bill 2020. Now all these, as they have been given the assent by the President, they are acts in a form. Okay, and now many of you may also come from an agricultural background, where you may be having the farming and all those things. So it is becoming more relevant for you to understand what significant change these bills bring into. Okay, so what we will do, we'll look into, first of all, introduce ourselves, then we will go into the background of these bills, then we will see each of these bills, then we will see each bill and its what you can say controversies that are there in each of the bill, and then we will move on to the conclusion part. So that's why I said it will be a long session. Now these all three bills, basically the Prime Minister, we all know, called it as a watershed moment in the history of Indian agriculture. But is it really? That is what is to be questioned, and that is what I intend to teach over here in today's session. So if you have any doubts and all those things, you can ask me anytime in the mid of the lecture also. Well, after every screen is blur, voice is lagging. Now I think screen is not blur, your internet connection is low. And Atish, I think my voice clear? Yes, from my side, it is my voice is clear. The screen is also clear. It is from your viewpoint. But still, again, I will repeat, these three bills are there, which have been in controversy. Now, some of you must have attended the earlier lectures by me also, and there also I discussed these three bills. But at that time, when I discussed these three bills, the protest haven't started. As I told you at that time, that we have to see how the farmers respond to this bill. But now is the time to see these bills in detail. Now there are two viewpoints basically. One will be the government's viewpoint, where government, like as I said, Prime Minister has hailed this passage of bill as a watershed moment in the history of Indian agriculture, where he has called one nation, one market. That is what the word he used later on. So there is government's viewpoint, there is farmers' viewpoint, but what is an UPSC aspirant's viewpoint? Now, from our side, what we have to do is that we have to critically analyze all the provisions in this bill. When we critically analyze all the provisions in this bill, that should be our approach. So UPSC is neutral. Okay, it is not that UPSC is always every year now and then. When it comes to UPSC, you should be pro to the government. Now, again, there are certain good provisions here also, but all the provisions have certain loopholes that needs to be assured, and we are hopeful that in the discussions that are going on between the government and the farmers union will come out into a successful, some significant results are expected out of that. So with these three bills, we'll move ahead and we will see each of them in our session. Now, what we can say initially is that we cannot deny that existing agricultural market machinery is in need of reforms. First point that you need to understand before we go into the bill, like this is the introduction part, that the agriculture market that exists, like for example, many of you are maybe from the farmers background, and you may have visited the APMCs, and in the APMCs, you may have seen how the farmers are exploited to certain extent. I'm not saying everywhere the farmers are exploited or everyone is exploiting the farmers, but there are certain lacunae in the present system that you have to understand. So obviously we need certain reforms, and we don't need certain reforms, we need a large level of reforms when it comes to agricultural marketing. Okay, because at the one end you have a farmer and the other end you have a consumer. We have to balance both, and it is in a country like India, it is very important to balance these two, because if the farming prices, like take the example of onion for that sake, if the onion prices are going high, then who is getting impacted? The basic consumer who has a simple livelihood, may not significant sources of livelihood, he is being deprived of that. Okay, so and at the same time, once we see that the farmers are here, so they face certain kind of uncertainty. So it is always that uncertainty with relating to the market machinery. So obviously we need certain reforms, we need a very significant reforms in the existing agriculture market machinery. However, these recent farm bills introduced by the union government and passed by the parliaments are facing strong opposition. So that is the point as to why they are facing the opposition. In spite of, like if you go and ask a common farmer in Maharashtra, and if you go and ask him like, okay, what was the treatment that you got when you went into a mandi? He will say that a lot of cuttings were happening, like farmers there, like for example, spoilage is there. What the व्यापारी जिसको कहते हैं, व्यापारी क्या करेगा कि कटिंग्स करेगा, ये कट्स वो कट्स, टैक्सेस एंड not taxes specifically, but certain what you can say cuttings he always will be doing. So for that, in spite of having the reforms, the farmers are protesting. That means there is something significant. Now the government initially took the route of ordinance, and that is again one very important point, that why the government, this raises a very significant question on the intention of the government, that such a significant bill, okay, which is going to change all agricultural structure, agricultural market machinery in India, why there was a need to root an ordinance, and that also during the COVID-19 pandemic. Was it necessary? Because in a democracy, we all say, and you must have studied in polity also, that ordinances are passed only when there is such an urgent, when there is an urgency. Okay, not, ordinance cannot be the normal route. But in spite of that, government passed an ordinance in the June. Then it got passed in the monsoon session. They passed it into the they brought it into the house, and the bills were passed. Now, obviously, they are having the majority, so obviously they are going to win. The farmer bills, according to the government, the farmer bills aim to give farmers the freedom to sell to any buyer. Okay, that is the first point. These farmer bills give farmers the freedom to sell to any buyers outside the APMC premises. Now, one thing that you should understand is that at present, you are not allowed, or no one is allowed to purchase the farm products outside the APMC. So you have to go through that route of APMC. Okay, and enter, that is the first point. So giving the freedom to farmer to sell to someone, like obviously it may sound good, but then there are limitations that we will see in the later course. Enter into contracts with the buyers directly and lifts restriction on the stock limits to incentivize private investment in agriculture. Now there is a lot of debate, okay, like whether we actually require a private investment in agriculture, and if there is a private investment in agriculture, will a small farmer be protected from that? So these are the aims that are given by the government, but we have to question these aims itself. The farmer bills, however, seem promising on paper. Yes, they do seem. When we see the each and every bill, we will see that what a good provisions they are, but does not acknowledge the practical difficulties associated with the proposed setup. This is very, very important point. That the farmers bill, they are seeming promising, they seem to be good on paper, but what about the real or the practical application of those problems? When we see the practical applications of those the provisions in the bill, then we are finding out that there are difficulties, and that is why we can say that the farmers in India, specifically in the northern India, are protesting right now. So to introduce the significance of farming, if we have to state, down and around 58% of the India's population, we all know, is dependent on agriculture as their primary source of livelihood. So see what amount of population is dependent directly on the agriculture. So this bill is not a small bill for that sake, because as it is impacting this percentage of the people, okay, so obviously 58% is a large number. So that's why this bill needed a larger consensus, but the government didn't do that, and they are facing with the protest. So which includes around 70% of the rural household, with 82% of these being small and marginal farmers. This is very, very important. I expect you to make notes out of this lecture, okay, so that you understand the basic economics of the Indian agriculture or the problem of agriculture. So 58% population, 70% of the rural household, and 82% of them being the small and marginal farmer. Now, what do you mean by small and marginal farmers? Those which are having a small land holdings. They are called as an, what you can say, they are called as an small farmers. Okay, so like for example, a person is having 2 acres, 2.5 acres, 1 acre, 1.5 acres, like the district in which I come from, where most of the people over there are having a very small amount of land, and obviously they have to migrate for sugarcane cutting in the western Maharashtra and all those things. So how these bills, provisions of this bill are going to impact, that we will see. Now, according to the farm census of 2015 and 16, about 86.2% of the small and medium farmer owned less than 5 acres of land. So this is very small. Understand this, less than 5 acres. That means that whole livelihood of that family or that farmers is dependent on agriculture. Like whatever is produced. Now in 5 acres, you are not going to grow that amount of cash crops, or that amount, or you are not going to get that amount of revenue as compared to the today's time in which we are living. Okay, so obviously we are bound to get a less amount of revenue. Mostly these type of farmers, and specifically in the northern India, what we find, very small land holding, and that land holding, again, because of the increase in the population and all those things, these things have happened. So if the medium and farmer own less than 5 acres of land, then what we are finding is that the revenue is not generated to that extent. And if the revenue is not generated to that extent, then we have to see that what are the issues and all those things. The agriculture sector, we all know in India, being even it being involving lot amount of people, being the primary source of livelihood, it has always been ignored. Okay, it has always been ignored, and that can be reflected from the farmers suicide in India. Now we all know that what is the proportion of the farmers suicide every now and then in Maharashtra also, or in the Punjab or Haryana. The Punjab, which is mostly one considered to be a very agriculture based state and a progressive state in terms of agriculture, there also the number of farmers committing suicide is increasing every day by day. And the situation is also very grim in Maharashtra too. I still remember in 2008 when this issue was brought about by P. Sainath. He was the rural editor of the Hindu, and he had visited every family where there was a farmer's suicide. You can see watch the documentary, the Nero. There is a documentary, Nero's Guest, named as Nero's Guest, and where you can find that how P. Sainath visited all the family members and all those things, what problems they were facing. So in spite of all those things, what we find, agriculture is ignored. And what is the reason always given? Irrigation and irrigation and irrigation. But understand, my dear friends, geographically it is not possible that you are going to have 100% irrigation in India. Okay, 100% irrigation is geographically not possible. Or even if I bring on the issue of interlinking of rivers, do you think it is feasible enough? Like if you are spending crores of lakh, or whatever you have to say, lakhs of crore rupees, then the output that we can get out of it, is it justified? No. So first of all, we have to get rid of that thing that the agriculture in India is messed up because of irrigation. No, apart from irrigation, you have to think that the farmer in India has been brought into what you can say, an open market where he doesn't have any kind of security. A person like heavy industries and all those things, they will receive every now and then, they will receive certain stimulus from the government, RBI, banks and all those things. But what about the agricultural sector? And if you are having like land less than 5 acres, who is going to give you the Kisan credit cards and all those things? There is no facility for loans and all those things, and how a person is supposed to live. So that's why this becomes very important issue. Now, this sector has faced economic, social, and environmental neglect also. This is again very important point, that in the agriculture sector itself, what we can find that economic, obviously, no one has worried about the economics of agriculture a lot. Social problems are coming out of the economics, and the environmental neglect. Like if you take the example of Punjab again, what you will be finding in Punjab is that large tracts of land have become barren. Why? Because excessive use of fertilizers and all those things, or even the issue of smog in the Delhi. We always say that it is related because because the farms are being burnt and all those things. So these are all the challenges that are there in the Indian agriculture. Moving on, just a minute. To look into these issues, the government in June 2020, the central government introduced 3 ordinances aiming at far-reaching agricultural reforms in the country. The government has stated that the objectives of the act are, first of all, to freeing up the curbs on trade, agricultural trade. Then second one, they stressed on liberalizing regulatory system. Liberalizing regulatory system means whatever the regulatory mechanisms are there. For example, APMC. So government stated its objective that we want to liberalize it. Then provide barrier-free trade. Like if you have to trade, a person in Maharashtra has to trade his agriculture produce with the in Tamil Nadu, then obviously he should be allowed to do that. So that barrier-free trade was one of the objectives that was stated by the government. And then creating a farmer-friendly environment. And what kind of farmer-friendly environment has been created? We will be seeing it now. So the provisions of these ordinances will override all state laws in this regard. Note down one very important point. Okay, these provisions, whatever the act passed by the government of India, will override all the state laws in this regard. So this is a question also of the federalism. I will come to that point in the later discourse. Okay, as to how these bills also violate the principle of cooperative federalism, or also the federalism as enshrined in the Indian Constitution. So we will be, I will go through that as we proceed. So, however, the ordinances have been met with strong opposition from the farmers as well as the commission agents. Like there are commission agents. I will tell you as we proceed what are their roles and all those things. And now they have taken to the streets demanding a rollback of these ordinances. Now these are not ordinances; they have become the act. Now in India, let us see what was the basic structure of agricultural marketing before we move on to the acts. So agriculture market in India was mainly regulated by the State Agriculture Produce Marketing Committee. That is what you call as an APMC. You must have heard about the APMC, like Navi Mumbai APMC is very large, okay, or Pune APMC, or every district or every taluka is having the APMC. So they were regulated by the state laws. So state used to make a laws regarding how these committees should be run and all those things. Now, APMCs were set up with an objective of ensuring a free trade, fair trade between buyers and sellers for effective price discovery of farmers. Produce APMCs can. So it was the objective of setting up the APMCs in those period was to ensure a free fair trade that between a buyer and a seller. Now understand this is altogether different when you compare it with the liberalized environment and the other products. Like a farmer does not have that bargaining capacity or holding capacity that he can do. Like for example, milk for that. Let's take the example of milk. You purchase the milk at what rupees, like it will be somewhere around 50 rupees liter and all those things. But that is regulated by the government. Okay, the milk purchased by milk which is purchased from the farmers, that is regulated by the government laws and all those things. But ice cream isn't. You can have 10 rupees ice cream also and 1000 rupees ice cream also. If you go to JW Marriott, you can have an ice cream which may go beyond 1000 rupees also. So here the thing is different. Okay, or like the best example is even we normally use the popcorn. Okay, the corn which we get and the corn which is being popcorn, which is being made out of it, is how costly it is. Visit PVR and you know 100 rupees popcorn. अगर उसका value अगर आप देखोगे तो उसका value really में कितना होगा? Okay, the production value. Okay, so ensuring a fair trade between buyer and seller, the APMCs were created, and APMCs were supposed to regulate the trade of farmers' produce by providing license to buyers, commission agents, and private market. So the purchase of, now why this was done, I will come to that part. But the one who is purchasing the farmers' produce and all those things, he was supposed to have a license, the commission agents or whatever. Obviously, no one is going to do it for free. So there were commission agents and all those things, but that was regulated, and that was regulated through APMCs. Okay, then APMCs were also allowed to levy market fees for their operation. Okay, for their working. Okay, levy market fees. Like you must have heard Marathi guys, Adath. Okay, Adath, if you take certain product in the market, then there is certain tax. Okay, that tax we can call it as fees, not as a tax, but fees will be a proper word. So they were supposed to do that. Now they were also supposed to provide necessary infrastructure within their market to facilitate the trade. For example, there are perishable goods, okay, like tomato or that coriander and all those things. So to facilitate it, to provide certain infrastructure was also the objective of the APMCs, which they were created. Now moving on, in 2018-19, there was a standing committee on agriculture observed that APMC laws are not implemented in their true sense and need to be reformed urgently. So it is reality that APMC laws were not implemented in their proper sense. So there was a requirement that these should be reformed. So the issues identified by the committee included, first of all, most APMCs have a limited number of traders operating, which leads to cartelization and reduces the competition. आप लोगों में से कितने लोगों ने कभी मंडी में विजिट किया है? Anyone? Anyone? You have really visited a mandi? Ashutosh, yes, you have. Okay, Shri has raised the hand. Yes. So if you go in the mandi, I mean the APMC basically. What you will find, लिलाव, मराठीत आपण त्याला म्हणतो लिलाव कसा होतो. So obviously, even if you take up your product to any number of traders are there. So what you will be finding that there are limited traders and the price range will always be that same. So there is no competition basically. So what is it? It is cartelization. We always think like this is being done. Like when we use the word onion market, so you may take it to one buyer or the other buyer, you may get the same result, same what you can say, same income. Now, why is that so? Because there is a cartelization and there is a reduced competition. So traders that were operating were limited. So that was observed by the committee, and which is true. Then undue deductions in the form of commissions. Okay, undue deductions in the form of commission charges and the market fees. Like if you go, let's say you have taken, आपने गेहूं लेके गए हैं मार्केट में, और गेहूं लेके जाने के बाद उसका लिलाव होता है. ओके, वो उसको बोली लगाई जाएगी कि ये कितने रुपए में, कितने रुपए में. लेकिन जब वो लिलाव लेते हैं तब वो क्या करते हैं, तो गेहूं निकालते हैं उसमें से, और गेहूं जितना कितना निकलता है, तो अगर आप एक बोरी में अगर आप 1-2 किलो गेहूं निकाल रहे हो, ओके, और उसको भी टैक्स कर रहे हो कि दिस इज लाइक वेस्टेज, और या फिर इन मराठीत सांगायचं झालं तर आडत, परत हमाली, all these charges were charged. Okay, so these deductions were made. So traders, commission agents, and other functionaries organize themselves into an associations, okay, which do not allow easy entry of new person into market yards, again leading to stifling competition. So the competition was reduced by the certain traders. Now this is reality, and this we should agree on. Because there is less number of competition, and because these people have created a cartel, they maintain, it's like a share market kind of thing, that you must have seen that scam. Certain people regulate the market. वो दिखाया है ना स्कैम में, वैसे ही यहाँ पे भी है. दिस इज कमोडिटी मार्केट कंसीडर करो, और यहाँ पे भी क्या है, कुछ लोग डिसाइड कर रहे हैं प्राइस कितना होगा. ओके, इट इज नॉट अकॉर्डिंग टू द मार्केट नॉर्म्स. मार्केट में क्या होगा, अगर प्रोडक्ट अच्छा है तो भी उसका रेंज वही है. प्रोडक्ट अगर बहुत अच्छा है तो उसको रेट भी ज्यादा मिलना चाहिए, लेकिन वो मिलता नहीं है. ये क्यों हो रहा है? बिकॉज पीपल हैव डिसाइडेड ओवर दैट. जैसे कि वो कितना मार्केट अप लेके जाना है, कितना मार्केट डाउन रखना है, ये सब कौन डिसाइड कर रहा है? दीज आर द ट्रेडर्स ओवर देयर. Okay, so that was the point that was identified by the committee. The acts are highly restrictive in promotion of multiple channels of marketing, such as buyers, private markets, direct sale to business and retail consumers, and online transactions and competition in the mass system. So this was also observed by the committee over there, that because you cannot market, like you may not have seen, like you produce a best quality of onion and you just onion or tomato or any of methi for that sake. Okay, I had the example of methi just because I brought a methi and that was like half of the methi तो खराब थी. तो वो मेथी भी होगी तो वो भी अगर अच्छा प्रोडक्ट है, लेकिन भी आप उसको मार्केट नहीं कर पा रहे. आपका दूध कितना भी बढ़िया क्वालिटी का होगा, लेकिन क्या आप उसको मार्केट कर पाएंगे? या फिर आपका दूसरा कोई प्रोड्यूस है, अपना एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस आपने जो क्रिएट किया है उसका क्वालिटी बहुत अच्छा है, शायद से आपने ऑर्गेनिक यूज किया होगा, वो कुछ किया होगा, लेकिन एक स्मॉल फार्मर के नजरिए से जब आप देखेंगे तब आपको ये दिखेगा कि ये ज्यादा एप्लीकेबल नहीं हो रहा है, तो इस फार्मर मार्केट नहीं कर पा रहा है. ओके, फार्मर मार्केटिंग उसका जब करेगा तो शायद से कुछ होगा. आज शायद से है, पूरे जैसे जगहों पे है कि डायरेक्टली फ्रॉम द फार्मर्स यू कैन परचेस एंड ऑल दोस थिंग्स, बट हाउ मेनी पीपल एक्चुअली डू इट? Like if you are living in a city, you must be knowing. Okay, so these was the observations that were made by the committee. And then in 1718 the central government released, now this is a background again, understanding, again I am telling you bit of boring stuff, but this is a background that you need to know of this act. So this, out of this committee's reports and before that also, the government released certain model APMC and contract farming act to allow restriction-free trade for farmers' produce, promote competition through multiple marketing channels, and promote farming under pre-agreed contracts. So they brought into a model code of conduct. Let us in simple words say a moral code of conduct for the agricultural product. But then this model code of conduct was not implemented. Okay, so and even the standing committees report that states have not implemented several of the reforms suggested in the model acts. So initially what the central government did, they created a model act and they gave it to the states, but the many of the states did not comply with that. Okay, and that resulted, well, that is one of the reasons you can say that it has resulted into these kind of things that we are looking into. Now the committee recommended that central government constitute a committee of agricultural ministers of all states to arrive at a consensus and design a legal framework for agricultural marketing. This is very important point. What is it? You should constitute a committee of all the agriculture ministers of the states. Now, this is basic principle of cooperative federalism. Okay, when it comes to cooperative federalism, you should build up a consensus. Like if the government would have discussed the provisions of the bill with the various stakeholders, then I don't think the issue would have risen right now. We are not seeing the issue to be from the political viewpoint. It is from the farmers' viewpoint. But farmers are represented by their representatives in their states because it is in the state list. Now, those were not consulted. And as they were not consulted, now what we are finding, there is a problem. And what is the problem? Obviously, these were not all consulted. But think vice versa, that if the Committee of Agriculture Ministers was formed, or any ministers was formed, and if they have discussed, then I think the bill would have been a different one. So the high-powered committee of 7 members, only 7 members were set up in July 2019 to discuss, among other things, adoption and time-bound implementation of model acts by the state. So committee was set up, but there were only 7 chief ministers. Now in 29 states in India, if you are having only 7 chief ministers, and that were mostly from the sitting party, governing party of the center, then what we can expect, but that is there. So I'm not going to go into politics of that a lot, but still the habit comes out. So adoption and time-bound implementation of the model acts by the state and changes to the Essential Commodities Act 1955, which provides for the control of production, supply, trade of essential commodities for attracting private investment in agriculture, marketing, and infrastructure. So this was the, what you can say, the background. And the further, because of this, on June 5, 2020, the ordinance was passed. Now, this is very challenging. Again and again, I'm repetitively saying, ordinance power is an extraordinary power that is to be used with restraint only in cases of emergency. It should not be used to bypass the state, bypass the legislature. If you are always using the ordinances and bypassing the legislature, then it is not a parliamentary form of government. But the government did it. So on June 5, 2020, all these ordinances were brought into. And these ordinances collectively tried to find out to create whatever the acts that we are having right now. So what the government stated that these ordinances have the objective of facilitating barrier-free trade for farmers, produce outside the market notified under the various state APMC laws, define a framework for contract farming, and impose stock limits on ops. So all these 3 acts are related to these things. So for example, the first act, the Farmer Produce Trade and Commerce Ordinance Act, is related to the barrier-free trade of farmers outside the markets. Second act, Farmers Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services Ordinance, was related to defining the framework of contract farming. And the third one was Essential Commodities Ordinance 2020 to impose a stock limit on agriculture product. Now, what are these terms and concepts? I will explain it to you, okay, as we move ahead. Don't worry, everything in this section will be explained to you today. The 3 ordinances together aim to increase opportunities for farmers to enter long-term sale contracts. Whether this is feasible or not, that is debatable. But the objective stated by government was to enter the farmers to enter into a long-term sale contracts. Second one, increase availability of the buyers. If the buyers are more, obviously the objective is what? That there will be a competition, and the competition will result into benefit of the farmers. Okay, and the permit buyers to purchase farm produce in bulk. Okay, so these all 3 objectives related to these 3 ordinances. And then finally, on 27 September 2020, President signed those bills, and that became the act. So that is in brief the background. So I hope you have understood what were the APMCs. At present, APMCs have been a significant player, or they have been very significant institution as such when it comes to the agricultural marketing and all those things. So now with this background, let's move on to see certain other things. But before we move on, first let's try to understand the concept of minimum support price. Okay. I hope you must have studied this in the regular lectures, minimum support price, as to what they are and what they are not. So, but still I will try to explain it over here in brief. It is important for you, again, because this is the biggest issue. Without knowing the concept, you cannot go into. And if you know, last year's prelims, there was a question on MSP also, as to who announces the MSP and all those things. So basically, minimum support price is a form of market intervention by the government of India to ensure agriculture producers against any sharp fall in the farm prices. So very simple, it is what that farmers should be protected from the fall of the farm prices. Okay, so providing the safeguard. So MSP is what? It is simply a safeguard to a farmer. Okay, safeguard to a farmer in the form of intervention by the government of India. Okay, simple. The minimum support prices then are announced by the government of India, important from the prelims point of view, at the beginning of sowing season for certain crops. Okay, not for all crops, but for certain crops, it is announced before the sowing season, based on the recommendations of Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices. So there is one committee that is called as a Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices that announces the MSPs. Okay, MSPs before the sowing season. Now, MSP is fixed by the government of India to protect the producer farmer against excessive fall in the price during bumper production years. So if there is a huge production, then obviously the prices will fall. We all know the simple law of demand and supply. So in that case, we need to protect the farmer or the producer, we can say. So MSP performs that role. So the minimum support prices are a guarantee price. Okay, they are the guarantee price for their produce from the government. Okay, that this is guaranteed. Minimum this will be guaranteed to you if you produce that product. Okay, like for example, wheat or any pulses and all those things, the minimum prices are announced. The major objectives of the MSP, there are two major objectives of the MSP. The first one is to support the farmers from the distress sale. Distress sale means what? Now farmers in India, let's take an example. Let me give an आपको एक example देता हूँ. समझो कि किसी फार्मर के घर में शादी है, उसकी बेटी की शादी है. Okay, what means he has to gain the money? उसको पैसा तो लगेगा, और उसके पास सपोज कोई प्रोडक्ट है. अगर प्रोडक्ट है उसके पास कोई प्रोड्यूस है और उस प्रोड्यूस को अभी भाव नहीं है, देयर इज नो वैल्यू, मतलब इतना कीमत नहीं मिल रहा है जितना मिलना चाहिए. जैसे कि प्याज का ले लो, फार्मर ने क्या किया, प्याज किया ना, वो उसके घर में शादी है, अभी वो प्याज क्या कर सकता है, तो वो स्टॉक नहीं कर सकता क्योंकि उसको पैसा चाहिए, या फिर उसके घर में कोई बीमार है. तो इस केसेस में अगर उसको बेचना है तो एक जरूरी ये है कि किसी भी हालत में उसको तो जरूरत होगी. ही इज नॉट अ सैलरी अर्निंग पर्सन. सैलरी वाले का अलग है, सैलरी वाले को पता होता है कि इतनी तारीख को उसकी सैलरी होने वाली है. लेकिन फार्मर के लिए क्यों ये इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है? बिकॉज फार्मर के डिस्ट्रेस किसी भी हालत में हो सकता है. तो जब वो डिस्ट्रेस में हो तब उस टाइम पे he should not be selling those things, okay, in whatever rate. So to protect it, so as to provide the safeguard, there is a MSP. ओके, अंडरस्टैंड. नहीं तो फार्मर्स का एक्सप्लॉयटेशन आप इमेजिन कीजिए, जैसे कि होता है कि अगर आपके पास बिल्कुल कुछ पैसा नहीं है तो आप कोई भी चीज किसी भी रेट पे बेच सकते हो. लेकिन फार्मर्स के साथ ये नहीं हो सकता, बिकॉज दैट इज देयर सोर्स ऑफ लाइवलीहुड. सो दे शुड नॉट बी एक्सप्लॉयटेड फॉर दैट. Okay, so that will lead to exploitation, and I hope you know there is a right against fundamental right against exploitation, and this is also a form of exploitation. So ये avoid करना ही है हमको. Okay. Now the second objective is to procure food grains for public distribution. Okay, we know in India we have a robust public distribution system. We have Food Security Act. Because we have lot many poor people in India, so government takes the responsibility of providing them the food grains and all those things. So government has to create a stock of that, and so as to procure the food grains. That is another objective of the MSP. Very simple one. In case the market price for the commodity falls below the announced minimum price due to bumper production and glut in the market, government agencies purchase the entire quantity offered by the farmers at the announced minimum price. So if there is a bumper production हो गया, market का rate बहुत down है, तो इस केस में आपको क्या होगा, तो गवर्नमेंट उसके लिए कुछ मिनिमम प्राइस डिसाइड करेगा. जैसे कि महाराष्ट्र में से है, many of you if you are from Marathwada or the Vidarbha, you know it happens with the cotton. Okay, कॉटन का प्रोडक्शन बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ गया, तो मार्केट में अगर आप बेचने जाओगे तो कॉटन का रेट बहुत कम होगा. इसीलिए तो अभी आप डिमांड देख रहे होंगे कि डिमांड क्या किया जा रहा है कि नहीं, सरकार अपने को एजेंसीज को शुरू करे, कॉटन प्रोक्योरिंग एजेंसीज को शुरू करे, ताकि उससे क्या होगा, तो उससे एटलीस्ट एक बेसिक मिनिमम अमाउंट तो मिल जाएगा. द फार्मर विल नॉट हैव टू डिपेंड ऑन द मार्केट नॉर्म्स, और मार्केट इज ऑल टुगेदर डिफरेंट. अंडरस्टैंड, मार्केट के रूल्स अलग हैं, और ये एग्रीकल्चर के लिए भी है. और इंडिया का फार्मर, अगेन एंड अगेन आई विल रिपीटेटिवली से, इंडियन फार्मर का प्रॉब्लम ये है कि वो अनप्रोटेक्टेड डायरेक्ट मार्केट इकोनॉमी में डाला गया है, उसके लिए कोई प्रोटेक्शन नहीं है. ओके, मूविंग ऑन. Now, how we determine the MSPs? This is not required for you, but just giving you a reference, and I will go through it very rapidly. These are the things on which the MSP is determined. In formulating the recommendation in respect of level of minimum support prices and other non-price measures, the Commission takes into account, apart from the comprehensive view of the entire structure of the economy of a particular commodity or group of commodities, the following factors: cost of production, changes in input prices, obviously, like cost of production. What is cost of production for sugarcane, or what is cost of production for the cotton? What is cost of production for potato? So generally in cases mein. Then changes in the input prices, like for example fertilizers, insecticides, pesticides, there may be changes in that, so that also is considered. Input output price parity, like how much you are giving an input and how much you are getting the output. Like for example, there are certain products where you have to, which actually give you a less amount of output. For example, saffron, केशर कितना महंगा है, you know, आप कितना, उसका प्रोडक्शन बहुत कम होता है, तो उसके हिसाब से अगर आपका क्वांटिटी कम है, तो उस हिसाब से आपको इनपुट और आउटपुट का प्राइस पैरिटी भी देखना पड़ेगा. Trends in the market prices, obviously, because you have to control the inflation also, food inflation. अगर ज्यादा बढ़ जाता है तो वो प्रॉब्लम है इंडिया में. Then is demand and supply in market, that is the basic economics. Intercrop price parity, effect on industrial cost structure, like if you are requiring warehouses and all those things, then industrial cost structure क्या होगा. या फिर simple example, अगर कॉटन का रेट ज्यादा बढ़ाया जाता है तो शायद से कपड़े महंगे होंगे, या फिर शुगर केन का प्राइस ज्यादा बढ़ाया गया, शुगर केन कंज्यूमर तक आते आते, और या फिर शुगर जो इंडस्ट्रीज में लगती है उसका प्राइस ज्यादा बढ़ेगा. So इन सब चीजों को देखा जाएगा. Effect on cost of living, then effect on general price level, international price situation. This is very volatile, international price situation, because again that point, that farmer has been unprotected. China में कॉटन का प्रोडक्शन बढ़ गया, तो यहाँ पे फार्मर मर रहा है. Okay, तो ये नहीं होना चाहिए, but ये हो रहा है. Okay, just imagine that tomorrow in the McDonald's you get a cabbage which is produced in USA. What will happen to that? What will happen to Indian farmers? Okay, so in that case, to avoid all those things, we have to look into this. The committee looks into these things. The parity between prices paid and prices received by the farmers. Obviously, this is very important. Like आप इतनी मेहनत करते हो, just आप imagine कीजिए एक farmer एक crop को grow करने के लिए कितनी मेहनत करता है. Okay, उसकी मेहनत का अगर आप calculation करेंगे wages, minimum wages act के हिसाब से, तो भी आपको दिखेगा कि बहुत बार तो मिनिमम वेज एक्ट भी नहीं, मिनिमम वेजेस भी नहीं निकलते हैं फार्मर्स के. ये सिचुएशन है. ओके, कि अगर आप मेरे ट्विटर पे जाएंगे तो लास्ट ईयर इसी पीरियड के दरमियान मैंने ये डाला था. मेरे गांव के एक लड़का, गांव का एक फार्मर है, ही टुक द ऑनियन इन द मार्केट, और वो ऑनियन का पूरा वो रुपया कितना आया, उसको 20 रुपया आया, 20 या 10 रुपया आया. आई हैव एक्चुअली पुट दैट रिसीट. मतलब ये सिचुएशन है. Okay, that happens. Like I also belong to the, like even my father was in army earlier, but मैं भी farmer, अभी तो वो फार्मिंग ही कर रहे हैं, तो मैं जानता हूँ कि कितनी मेहनत करनी पड़ती है. और आप में से बहुत से लोग हैं तो क्या उतना भी निकलता है? कि कंपेयर कीजिए कि 3 महीने का एक क्रॉप है और 3 महीने के क्रॉप में आपको डेली आपको आपकी इन्वॉल्वमेंट है उसमें, और डेली इन्वॉल्वमेंट में अगर आप मिनिमम वेजेस से भी कैलकुलेट करेंगे क्या उतना वो आउटपुट मिल रहा है और घर के कितने लोग उसमें इन्वॉल्व है. सो यू शुड बी थिंकिंग दीज थिंग्स ऑल्सो. Effect on, and then is the effect on issue prices and implications for subsidy. So subsidy is one important thing that is altogether a different issue. We will discuss it later, but right now these are the parameters on which the MSP is determined. One more important thing, remember over here or write it down, this does not apply to the sugarcane, because sugarcane is given the, what you can say, sugarcane pricing is decided on the basis of FRP. Okay, what is FRP and all those things, that is for another lecture. The commission make use of both micro level data and aggregates at the level of district, state and the country. तीनों level पे वो data aggregate करता है, जिला, state and the country. The information data used by the commission include cost of cultivation per hectare. It varies according to the region to region. ओके, बिहार में एक वैल्यू हो सकता है, महाराष्ट्र में एक वैल्यू हो सकता है, यूपी में एक वैल्यू हो सकता है, पंजाब में एक वैल्यू हो सकता है. सो कॉस्ट ऑफ कल्टीवेशन पर हेक्टर एंड स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ कॉस्ट इन वेरियस रीजन्स ऑफ द कंट्री एंड चेंजेस देयरइन. सो उनका एक एवरेज निकाला जाएगा बेसिकली. कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन पर क्विंटल इन वेरियस रीजन्स ऑफ कंट्री एंड चेंजेस देयरइन. Then prices of various inputs and changes therein. Various inputs like insecticides may be costing here differently and in other states they may be different. Market prices of the products and changes therein. Then prices of commodities sold by the farmers and those purchased by them and changes therein. So commodities sold by the farmer, किस state में क्या rate चल रहा है उसके हिसाब से. Supply related information, for example area, कितना yield हुआ है, कितना production हुआ है, इंपोर्ट क्या है, एक्सपोर्ट क्या है, डोमेस्टिक अवेलेबिलिटी क्या है. डोमेस्टिक अवेलेबिलिटी जैसे कि आप देखिए एग्जांपल, हर बार हम लोग ये देखते हैं कि गवर्नमेंट के पास बहुत बार प्लान ही नहीं होता. लाइक ऑनियन के प्राइसेस बढ़ गए तो एक्सपोर्ट रोक दिया और प्राइसेस आर डाउन नाउ. ओके, तो ये ऐसा होगा तो फार्मर का क्या होगा सिचुएशन, आप इमेजिन कीजिए. ओके, व्हेन वी आर स्पीकिंग अबाउट सेंसिटिविटी टुवर्ड्स द फार्मर्स, ऑनियन के प्राइसेस बढ़ गए, आपके पास कोई मैकेनिज्म नहीं है, आपने क्या कर दिया, एक्सपोर्ट रोक दिया. एक्सपोर्ट रोक दिया, मार्केट डाउन. मार्केट डाउन एक मतलब ये लॉटरी हो गया ना किसी न किसी, और मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स आप फार्मर्स के मुंह से सुनते ही है ये लॉटरी जैसी चीज है. ओके, ऑनियन के बारे में बहुत बार लॉटरी ही कहा जाता है. ओके, और इवन लाइक टुडे इफ यू आर सेइंग, इवन इन महाराष्ट्र हॉर्टिकल्चर इज बीइंग डेवलप्ड अ लॉट, जहां पे फ्रूट्स वगैरह ग्रो ज्यादा हो रहे हैं, उनके प्राइसेस की मैकेनिज्म देखिए आप. ओके, तो कोई कंटिन्यूटी नहीं है. Okay, and that is the problem. So ये सब चीजें they are supposed to look into, and on the basis of that they decide the MSP. Now they also relate it to the demand related information. So like for example total and per capita consumption, mostly in cases of sugarcane, क्योंकि यहाँ consumption बहुत ज्यादा है. Okay, so demand कितना है उसके हिसाब से किस चीज का कितना demand होगा. Okay, trends and capacity of processing industry. Prices in international market changes, demand and supply situation. Prices of derivatives of farm products such as sugar, jaggery. Derivatives sugar का price कितना होगा, कितना है, कितना निकल रहा है. Jute prices, jaggery, edible oils, all these things, soya beans and all these things, उनका price कैसे decide होता है? उनका price तो इन चीजों पे decide होगा. Cost of processing of agriculture products and changes therein. Like what is the cost of production? जैसे शुगर केन के से अगर आप शक्कर बना रहे हैं तो उसके बीच में कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन भी आ रहा है, या फिर इन हॉर्टिकल्चर जूसेस बना रहे हो तो उसमें एक कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन ऐड हो रहा है. तो वो सब चीज है, लेकिन इन सब चीजों के लिए एक्चुअली एमएसपी नहीं है, मैं सिर्फ एग्जांपल्स दे रहा हूँ. कॉस्ट ऑफ मार्केटिंग विच इन्वॉल्व्स द स्टोरेज, ट्रांसपोर्टेशन, processing, marketing services, taxes, fees, margins, return. Like just compare. दिल्ली में जाएंगे तो केले बहुत महंगे हैं. क्यों महंगे हैं? दिल्ली में केले क्यों महंगे हैं? क्योंकि वो महाराष्ट्र से जाते हैं. या फिर ऑनियन वहां नॉर्दर्न स्टेट्स में ज्यादा महंगा होता है कंपेयर टू महाराष्ट्र, बिकॉज महाराष्ट्र इज द ऑनियन प्रोड्यूसिंग स्टेट. नाउ इफ इट इज एन ऑनियन प्रोड्यूसिंग स्टेट, सो वहां पे मार्केटिंग ट्रांसपोर्टेशन कॉस्ट की वजह से वो ज्यादा हो रहा है. तो ऑब्वियसली एमएसपी डिसाइड करते समय ये भी चीजें डिसाइड देखी जाएंगी. Then there is a macro level variables such as general level of prices, consumer price CPI, we all know that, and those reflecting monetary and fiscal factors, because we have to control the inflation. In India, it is very tricky to, at one side you have to decide about the farm produce, and at the other level you have to look into the food inflation. Because if the food inflation increases, it is not the upper sections of the society which are impacted, but there are lower sections of the society which are impacted. Like for example, if the price of certain produce is going very high, then there are migrant laborers, kind of migrant laborers or labor working class and all those things, which will not be able to purchase that. Okay, and that is actually the case. Okay, like you cannot expect, आप देखते होंगे, you will not get people who are like for example those people जो लेबर काम करते हैं एमएसपी, वो कहीं अभी सब्जी खरीद रहे हैं, ग्रीन फ्रूट्स खरीद रहे हैं, ये क्यों नहीं खरीद पाते? बिकॉज दे आर नॉट केपेबल ऑफ डूइंग दैट. The increase in MSP for Kharif crops is in line with the Union Budget 2018-19 announcement of fixing the MSPs at the level of at least 1.5 times. Okay, so that was decided. मतलब जितना आपका cost of production simple level पे होता है ना, cost of production जितना होगा उसके 1.5 पट आपका MSP होना चाहिए. ये ऐसे कहा गया है, aiming at reasonably fair remuneration for the farmers. So, but still again, there is a point. Calculate the amount of time spent by farmer और कैलकुलेट जस्ट द मिनिमम वेजेस. अगर वो रोज काम कर रहा है तो मिनिमम वेज अगर आवरली बेसिस पे भी करने कलेक्ट आप ये करते हो तो जितने घंटे वो स्पेयर करता है, क्या वो उतना उसको मिलता है? दैट इज टू बी डिसाइडेड. Now this is the crops that are covered. This is for prelims part, and this is the last part in the MSP, and then we will move on to the actual acts and all those things. So the government announces minimum support prices for 22 mandated crops and fair remunerative prices for sugarcane. FRP, Western Maharashtra guys must be knowing FRP. What is FRP? It is not the scope of lecture right now. It is altogether a different lecture. But just know sugarcane is not added into that. It is an altogether on different basis. And in sugarcane also, I will tell you the situation in Maharashtra. Compare the situation in Maharashtra and compare the situation with the sugarcane industry in Uttar Pradesh. Okay, here there are cooperatives, so there are stakeholders, so at least the sugarcane farmers are prosperous in Maharashtra compared to those in the Uttar Pradesh. Just read certain articles. You can go on Indian Express and just search for the articles on FRP and all those things. Comparing Maharashtra and Uttar Pradesh, you will get to know. Now there are 14 mandated Kharif crops, 6 Rabi crops. I hope you understand Kharif and Rabi. इतना basic में नहीं जाना है मुझे अभी. Okay, in addition, the MSP of Toria and D-Husk coconut. Coconut is also there. Okay, like the D-Husk, like natural coconut, we can say, are fixed on the basis of MSPs of the rapeseed, mustard, coprax, respectively. ये सब नाम है, आपको जरूरी नहीं है. So इन सब चीजों के basically ये चीजें हैं जिनकी MSP सरकार decide करती है. Cereals, 7 cereals हैं. Okay, pulses, 5 pulses, oil seeds, then cotton, raw jute, copra, D-Husk coconut, sugarcane, which is in FRP, and Virginia flue-cured tobacco. So these are the crops that are covered under the MSP. Okay. Now, any questions regarding MSP and up till now? Well, let's move on to the acts now. Let's move. Okay, the first act, the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Act, Promotion and Facilitation Act 2020. Again, I'm telling you the approach. First of all, I will take all the 3 acts and remember these 3 acts minutely, because we are going to criticize, or we are going to not criticize, we are going to critically analyze the provisions of this act. Over here, right now, the acts which I'm teaching you in this what you can say, in this continuity, these 3 will be from the government's viewpoint as to what are their objectives, what are they doing, and all those things. So they are not a criticism, or they are not a critically analyzed. So critical analysis will be done of each act after we complete all these 3 acts. So let's start with the first act, and that is Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act 2020. The simple thing in this act is you get rid of APMC. Okay, very simple. Very simple. In simple terms, if someone asks you, what is this act about? So this act is about selling your product anywhere, wherever you want, anywhere and to anyone. Simple thing. Okay, in very simple words, this act is about selling the agriculture product at any place and to anyone. Okay, it does not involve the APMC or those kind of things. That does not mean that APMCs will be abolished. Okay, this does not mean APMC will be abolished. Again, to be very clear, APMCs will be there, but the restriction of selling only at the APMC is being taken away. So what is the act? There are far-reaching implications of Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Act 2020, particularly with respect to Punjab and Haryana, and that is where you are finding the protest also. So the greater choice in selling their agriculture produce, increased remuneration, and attracting large-scale private investment into agro-business are stated aims of this bill. 3 points. First one, okay, greater choice in selling their agriculture produce. Second, increased remuneration. And third, attracting large-scale private investment in agro-business. These are the 3 aims of the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Act 2020. Write it down or remember it. Okay, very simple. इसमें explanation कुछ है नहीं. पहले क्या है choice उसका, इसीलिए मैंने आपको कहा कि क्या है choice किस तरह से है कि आपको कहीं भी सेल करना है, किसी को भी सेल करना है, वो प्रोविजन यहाँ पे दिया हुआ है. दूसरा क्या है, इंक्रीज रिन्यूमरेशन. मतलब आउटकम कह रहे हैं कि जैसे कि आपको ग्रेटर चॉइस मिलता है सेलिंग का, तो आपको ज्यादा इनकम मिलेगा, आपको ज्यादा रिन्यूमरेशन मिलेगा. ये गवर्नमेंट का लॉजिक है उसके पीछे. एंड ऑब्वियसली दिस विल इन्वॉल्व अट्रैक्टिंग लार्ज स्केल प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टमेंट आल्सो. ओके, trade outside the market premises, that is the first point. Okay, within this act, I'm not going act by the sections and all those things, that is not required for UPSC, but the significant provisions. Now this act permits barrier-free intrastate and interstate trade. Barrier-free, intrastate, interstate. आप स्टेट के बाहर भी बेच सकते हो, स्टेट के अंदर भी बेच सकते हो, कोई बैरियर नहीं है. The act seeks to pave the way for one nation, one agriculture market. Like for example, you can sell your product in Andhra Pradesh, in Telangana, or in Tamil Nadu, wherever you want to. Okay, so that was not that was restricted a bit earlier, but now it is not there. It provides that. I hope you understand this point. This point is very important. One nation, one agriculture market. Okay, the question can directly be: one nation, one agriculture market. Is it feasible? Comment. Okay, or is it feasible? Discuss or give your opinions. That kind of question can be asked on this. It provides that a buyer can purchase from produce directly from the farmer outside the physical premise of the market committees. So that's why I said you, the buyer can purchase directly from the farmer outside the premise of the market committees. So you don't need to go into the market committee to sell your product. The buyer can come directly to you, or you can go directly to the buyer outside of the market committee, and then you can sell your product. This is the very important provision. We will look into the analysis of this part later. Second point is abolition of market fee. Any such transaction that are made outside the market will be exempted from all taxes or fees associated with the state APMCs. So whatever the taxes are there, like for example, adat, we generally call it, like when you take any product, there is certain taxes are lived over there. So there will not be any fees or taxes. These all will be exempted under the state APMC, which are there under the state APMC. So abolition of market fees is the second important point. And furthermore, the buyers will also not require the license to purchase from farm produce directly from the farmers. So even tomorrow I can start the business. Okay, so if I have the money, I can start purchasing it and I can sell it at other prices. I can be the trader without having a license. So as I am a trader without a license, I don't have an obligation. Okay, or I don't have a regulatory mechanism. And that was one of the principles in earlier cases that we have seen. Regulatory mechanism जो है उसको कम करना, ये आगे पहले हमने देखा था, तो यही है. Then moving on, electronic trading. This is interesting. The bill further allows any person who has a PAN card to establish and operate an electronic trading and transaction platform for the facilitation of direct and online trade of agriculture produce in the trade area. मेरे पास पैन कार्ड है, मैं अपना खुद इलेक्ट्रॉनिक ट्रेडिंग कर सकता हूं. मैंने परचेस कर लिया है. ओके, आपका ऑनियन दिखाओ, मैंने यहीं से खरीद लिया आपका ऑनियन. ओके, सो दैट इज अलाउड. सो इलेक्ट्रॉनिक ट्रेडिंग of the commodity to whom any person who has a PAN card. Now PAN card is now a normal thing. Everyone almost has a PAN card, so that is there. Then with after this, if there is a dispute in this, so it creates a dispute resolution mechanism also, and that is setting up of conciliation boards by the subdivisional magistrate. SDM जो होता है, like in our Marathi we call it Prant Adhikari and all those things, subdivisional magistrate, for arriving at mutually acceptable solutions in cases of disputes arising out of transaction between farmers and traders. So if there is any conflict, if there is any issue, then obviously there is a conciliation board will be established under the subdivisional magistrate. Now this is what the bill provisions are there. 4 important. First of all, let me go back and let me tell you again: trading outside the market premise, abolition of market fee, electronic trading is allowed, and there is a dispute resolution mechanism also. Now from the government's viewpoint, let's see what is the conclusion. Farmers in India suffered from various restrictions in marketing their produce. There were restrictions for farmers in selling agri-produce outside the notified APMC area, market yards. The farmers were also restricted to sell the produce only to registered license of the state governments. Now these barriers are overcome by the Act. Okay. Further, barriers existed in free flow of agriculture produce between various states. So there were barriers like you have to pay certain taxes, levies and taxes if you have to sell a product in the other state. Now that has been exempted owing to prevalence of various APMC. अगर आप आंध्र में जाके बेचना चाहते हो तो आपके लिए कुछ अलग taxes and levies हुआ करते थे जो अभी नहीं है. So that's why one nation, one agriculture market. This legislation is an important step in unlocking the vastly regulated agriculture market in a country. So it is good in one point from the government's viewpoint. Why? Because it is unlocking the vastly regulated agriculture market, whereas we want a liberalized market, and for liberalized market, regulation should be got rid of. It will open more choices for the farmer. That is according to government. Second point, now if the question is asked on the benefits of this act, then you will write first point, it will open more choices for the farmer. Second, reduce marketing cost for the farmers, because obviously you don't have to take them, a person can come directly to you, okay, and he can take transportation and help them in getting better prices. It will also help farmers of regions with surplus produce to get better prices, and consumers of region with shortages lower prices. So for example, if there is a bulk production of onion in Maharashtra, and if there is there is no onion production in Uttar Pradesh, so obviously a farmer from Maharashtra can sell the onion in Uttar Pradesh. Now if he is selling in Uttar Pradesh, obviously he will get a good amount, and whereas the consumers of that area will also get into a lower prices. So that was the point. Anything in this act? Simple one. Moving on to the another act. Simple one again. The Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services Act. This act, as simply, in simple terms, this act is regarding contract farming. Okay. Contract farming. That is the simple way to define this second act. And what is it? It is the bill seeks to regulate contract farming. Very simple. Contract farming याद रखना है. पहले में क्या रखना है? APMC. Second में contract farming. That will permit farmers to trade their agriculture produce outside the APMC through a national framework that seeks to protect and empower farmers for engaging with agro-business firms, large retailers, exporters of farm produce without fear of exploitation. This is what the government says. Let's take an example. For Reliance Fresh, आपको Reliance Fresh क्या करेगा? आप डायरेक्ट Reliance Fresh को बेच सकते हैं, या फिर Reliance Fresh आपसे कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करेगा. आपने क्या किया है? आपकी खेती में मिर्ची की है, लाल मिर्ची लगाई है आपने, तो ये पूरी की पूरी लाल मिर्ची का जो भी प्रोड्यूस होगा, जितना भी आएगा, the contract will be held between the Reliance Fresh and the farmer. This is simply the contract farming. Okay, contract farming का मतलब ये मत लेना कि रिलायंस आके खेती करेगा. रिलायंस आके खेती नहीं करने वाला. क्या हो रहा है यहाँ पे? तो जो इंस्टीट्यूशंस है, जो बिजनेस एग्रो बिजनेस फर्म्स होंगे, फॉर एग्जांपल जैसे मैप्रो है, आपने आपको मैप्रो पता होगा, महाबलेश्वर मैप्रो है, ये जूसेस के लिए फेमस है एंड ऑल दोस थिंग्स. सो दे गेट इन्वॉल्व इनटू द फर्म्स फार्मर्स एंड ऑल थिंग्स. किसने स्ट्रॉबेरी लगा दिया, ठीक है, और जितना भी आएगा जो भी आएगा मैं स्ट्रॉबेरी खरीद लूंगा, ये रेट पे, ये इतना इतना मैं खरीदूंगा आपसे. तो क्या हो गया, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट हो गया. कॉन्ट्रैक्ट किसके बीच में, फार्मर के बीच में और एक ट्रेडर के बीच में. ट्रेडर कौन हो सकता है, ट्रेडर यहाँ पे एग्रो बिजनेस फर्म हो सकते हैं, लार्ज रिटेलर्स हो सकते हैं, एक्सपोर्टर्स हो सकते हैं. ओके, नाउ इसमें सरकार कह रहा है कि फियर ऑफ एक्सप्लॉयटेशन नहीं होगा. क्यों नहीं होगा, ये पॉइंट सरकार क्यों कह रही है, क्योंकि यहाँ पे प्री डिफाइंड होगा. जैसे कि कॉन्ट्रैक्ट फार्मिंग में प्रोविजंस होगा कि प्री डिफाइंड होगा, इतना इतना प्रोड्यूस होगा, जितना भी प्रोड्यूस होगा, या फिर जो भी क्लॉजेस होंगे, बिकॉज इट इज अ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, तो उसमें लिखा होगा, ओके, कि उसमें लिखा होगा कि इतना मुझे प्राइस मिलेगा. ओके, सो दैट्स व्हाई इट इज सिंपल वन. सो फार्मिंग एग्रीमेंट इज वन ऑफ द पॉइंट इनटू दैट. Farming agreement between a farmer and purchasing relating to the sale of future farming produce at a mutually agreed remunerative price framework. Okay, farming agreements मतलब क्या करेगा, मैंने जो आपको बताया, जो किसान है, किसान और जो ट्रेडर है, परचेसर है, वो पहले से ही अपने आप में एक एग्रीमेंट करेंगे, और जिस एग्रीमेंट के तहत उसको एक अच्छा भाव मिले, इस हिसाब से वो होगा. तो अगर ये कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है, इसकी वजह से क्या है, ये फेयर एंड ट्रांसपेरेंट अपने आप हो जाएगा, क्योंकि कॉन्ट्रैक्ट आर लीगली बाउंडिंग. ओके, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स हैव लीगल बाइंडिंग. सो लीगल बाइंडिंग होने की वजह से सरकार इसको कहती है कि इट इज अ फेयर एंड ट्रांसपेरेंट मैनर. नाउ देयर इज फॉर द प्रीलिम्स, रिमेंबर दिस line, the minimum period stipulated for agreement is one crop season. ओके, एक क्रॉप मिनिमम पीरियड कितना है प्रीलिम्स के लिए, लिख के रखो, वन क्रॉप सीजन और वन प्रोडक्शन साइकिल ऑफ लाइफ स्टॉक. लाइफ स्टॉक में भी हो सकता है, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल आई एम क्या बोलते हैं, मेरा मटन शॉप है. ओके, मेरा मटन शॉप है, तो मैंने डिसाइड कर दिया है इतनी बकरियां मैं खरीदने वाला हूँ, बकरे में खरीदने वाला हूँ, तो बकरे में खरीदूंगा उतने उतने प्राइस में. तो वो हो गया उसका एक प्रोडक्शन साइकिल ऑफ द लाइफ स्टॉक. और क्रॉप के बारे में, क्रॉप सीजन आप समझते हैं, एक क्रॉप सीजन क्या होता है. ओके, और द मैक्सिमम पीरियड क्या है, 5 साल, unless there is a longer production cycle of any farming produce. और 5 साल, आई थिंक 5 साल के ऊपर कोई फार्म प्रोडक्शन साइकिल नहीं होता है जनरली आप गन्ना भी करेंगे तो 2 या 3 बार तक ही लेते हैं. मतलब शुगर केन का फार्मिंग भी एक बार लगाया तो सेकेंड एंड थर्ड टाइम पे ही लेते हैं, बाद में तो लेते नहीं. सो 5 साल तक ऐसे कुछ है नहीं. अपार्ट फ्रॉम हॉर्टिकल्चर में हो सकता है, जैसे कि फ्रूट्स जो लगाए जाते हैं, लाइक पोमोग्रेनेट, दाड़िम ज्याला तुम्ही म्हणता, so that can be there. So उन केसेस में हो सकता है. So maximum period is 5 years for that. ओके, तो इस कुछ ऐसे प्रोडक्ट्स हो सकते हैं, फार्म प्रोड्यूस हो सकते हैं जो शायद से 5 साल के बाद आए. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल मैंगो, अगर आपने कोई मैंगो प्लांटेशन किया है, तो मैंगो प्लांटेशन को अगर 5 साल लग रहे हैं, तो 5 साल का एग्रीमेंट आप पहले ही कर रहे हैं. तो ये एग्रीमेंट का क्लॉज है, और एग्रीमेंट होने की वजह से ये फेयर एंड ट्रांसपेरेंट होगा, ऐसे ही कहा जा रहा है. मूविंग ऑन. Now conditions and pricing of agricultural produce. क्या conditions है और pricing किस तरह से होगा. The agreement, here is the point of MSP. The agreement itself must contain the price of farm produce. So जब भी agreement बनेगा तो उसमें farm produce का price होना जरूरी होगा. जैसे कि आप अगर कॉटन लगा रहे हैं या फिर कपास लगा रहे हैं या फिर आप लेट्स से नींबू लगा रहे हैं, तो उसका जो प्राइस आप लेने वाले हैं किसी भी दर पे, शायद से किलो पे लेंगे या फिर आप होलसेल में बोलेंगे कि नहीं 1 एकड़ लगाया है तो इसमें इतना प्रोड्यूस आएगा, इतना मैं खरीद लूंगा. तो दैट प्राइस शुड बी मेंशन इन द एग्रीमेंट. एंड द कंडीशंस फॉर कंप्लायंस, the conditions for the compliance, like there are various issues. For example, farmer लगाएगा, ओके, ये नींबू लगाया और नींबू हो गया मार्केट में, बहुत ज्यादा प्रोडक्शन हो गया, नींबू का रेट एकदम कम आ गया, तो उस केस में ही कॉन्ट्रैक्टर दूसरा जो है वो ये नहीं बोलेगा कि मार्केट का रेट कम हो गया इसकी वजह से आपको मुझे इसी रेट पे बेचना है, तो वो नहीं होगा. कंडीशंस फॉर कंप्लायंस विल बी देयर with mutually acceptable quality, grade and standards. So there are 3 things: quality, grade and standards. ऐसे भी नहीं होगा, ये फार्मर्स के लिए भी है कि नहीं वो कुछ भी लगाएगा, वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट हो गया, चलो अभी बेचना है कुछ भी, तो वैसे नहीं होगा. ही हैज टू टेक द केयर, क्योंकि जिस ग्रेड का वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कर रहा है उसी ग्रेड का उसका वो प्राइस मिलेगा. सो थिंग्स आर बीन कोडिफाइड सिंपल सेंस में अगर कहा जाए तो. इन केस ऑफ द प्राइस बीइंग सब्जेक्टेड टू वेरिएशन, the agreement must specify a guaranteed price. Okay, जहां कहीं price variation होता है, agreement must specify a guaranteed price and any additional amount above the guaranteed price. So अगर price variations हैं, उसमें होने वाली चीजें हैं, जनरली जो होता है price variations होंगे, मार्केट नॉर्म्स है, तो इस केस में आपको गारंटीड प्राइस वहां पे लिखना होगा. ये गारंटीड प्राइस का मतलब क्या है कि मिनिमम प्राइस आपको लिखना है. ओके. Furthermore, it must also specify the process used for the determination of price. और भी आपको लिखना है कि आप प्राइस कैसे डिटरमाइन करोगे. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल प्राइस क्या आप उसकी क्वांटिटी पे, क्वालिटी पे डिसाइड करोगे, उसकी साइज पे डिसाइड करोगे, किस पे डिसाइड करोगे. Okay, so that will be all defined. So that is the second point in this act. The third point, dispute resolution. Now here again there is a dispute redressal mechanism that has been created by the act. The bill prescribes that every farming agreement must provide for a conciliation process and conciliation board in respect of any disputes arising from the agreement. अगर कोई भी dispute होता है तो उसके लिए एक conciliation board create करना ऐसे mention है act में. And the board shall consist representatives of the parties to the agreement. It is just like a court, but like you can say informal court. The other authority for deciding disputes relating to the farming agreement is again SDM, subdivisional magistrate. Okay, शायद से आपका वो पहला posting हो. Okay, तो maybe you may be there in the futures. अगर वो रहता है तो पहला posting, अगर आप IS बनते हो तो शायद से probation period पे आप वहां पे रहोगे. Okay, so that is about the second act. Very simple one, only 3 points: farming agreement, conditions for pricing, and dispute resolution. So the second act is related to the contract farming. And now is the Essential Commodities Amendment Bill 2020. Now this relates to the supply mechanism. Simple में कहा जाए, 2 words में, this is related to the supply mechanism. ओके, सप्लाई मैकेनिज्म मतलब कितना स्टॉक कर सकते हैं, कितना आप स्टॉक नहीं कर सकते, इसके बारे में. जनरली स्टॉक कितना भी कर सकते हैं, ऐसा ही प्रोविजन है. अब यहाँ पे बहुत लूप होल्स हैं, और जैसे ही हम इसके बाद आगे मूव ऑन करेंगे क्रिटिसिज्म में, तब आप जनरली फाइंड आउट करोगे कि कितना इंटरेस्टिंग, व्हाई द पीपल आर प्रोटेस्टिंग अगेंस्ट दिस इन स्पाइट ऑफ दीज एक्ट्स सेमिंग टू बी वेरी गुड. ओके, सो बी देयर. Though through the Essential Commodities Bill 2020, Section 3(1)(a), कोई section है ऐसे समझ लो, has been inserted to act which empowers the central government to regulate the supply of specified food items only in extraordinary situations. Now this is tricky again. The central government gets the power to regulate the supply of specified good. कि सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट डिसाइड करेगा इसका सप्लाई कितना होना चाहिए. जैसे जनरली आप ऑनियन के बारे में देखते हैं ना, सरकार ऑनियन, दिल्ली गवर्नमेंट ने ऑनियन बेचना शुरू किया, तो उन्होंने रेगुलेट क्या किया, तो जो आ रहा है वो अपने रेट से कुछ बेचना है. ये प्रोविजंस बेसिकली. It aims to protect and enhance the farmers' income as well as interest of the consumers, as said by the government. Now, what are the regulations for the food items? Supply of certain food items, including cereals, pulses, potatoes, onions, edible oil seeds, and oils may be regulated by the central government only under extraordinary circumstances. So ये इनके prices जो है, इनको जो supply है, पहले देखो कैसे होता था सप्लाई. बिफोर 1991 गवर्नमेंट यूज्ड टू डिसाइड कितना सप्लाई होगा, क्या होगा, क्या होगा. लेकिन अभी सप्लाई जो है सिर्फ एक्स्ट्राऑर्डिनरी सर्कमस्टेंसेस में ही गवर्नमेंट इसको रेगुलेट कर पाएगा. मतलब क्या है, अभी इसका दूसरा पॉइंट देखो. मतलब अगर कोई स्टॉक करके रखना चाहता है तो वो स्टॉक करके रख सकता है. लाइक अगर मैंने डिसाइड किया ऑनियन को स्टॉक करना है या फिर पोटैटोस को स्टॉक करना है, बिकॉज बाय स्टॉकिंग आई कैन लिमिट व्हाट इज द सप्लाई इन द मार्केट. और सप्लाई मैंने अगर डिसाइड किया, सप्लाई को कंट्रोल किया, तो ऑब्वियसली डिमांड बढ़ेगी या फिर डिमांड आपका जो रेट है वो बढ़ेगा. तो ये जो प्रोविजंस था इसेंशियल कमोडिटीज में, सरकार इनमें ध्यान देती थी. सरकार बोल रही कि अभी हम सब ये सब चीजें जो है सिर्फ एक्स्ट्राऑर्डिनरी सर्कमस्टेंसेस में ही करेंगे. और वो एक्स्ट्राऑर्डिनरी सर्कमस्टेंसेस का डेफिनेशन जो है, it is said to be may include. This word may, it creates ambiguity. May include famine, war, grave natural calamities, or extraordinary price rise. So they have not clearly defined what are the extraordinary circumstances. They have just given the examples of extraordinary circumstances. So we don't know. Now, what will this impact? This can lead to the hoarding. Okay, hoarding से क्या होता है कि प्राइसेस को बढ़ावा, प्राइसेस सप्लाई आप कंट्रोल करो तो अपने आप मार्केट का जो रूल है वो अपने आप मार्केट में प्राइसिंग कंट्रोल हो जाता है. The bill aims at removing existing stringent restrictions on stocks. Very important. मतलब देखो यहाँ पॉइंट क्या है, क्या फार्मर स्टॉक कर पाएगा? Does farmer have that mechanism? अगर मेरे पास लेट्स से पोमोग्रेनेट है, डाळिंबाची शेती आहे, डाळिंब लावलेले आहे, पण मी डाळिंब माझ्याकडे स्टॉक करून ठेवू शकतो का? No, I cannot, because I don't have the warehouse to protect it. But whereas some other trader or a big farmer, a big person may have the mechanism to stock that, so वो कर सकता है. इसमें directly farmers का कैसे benefit होगा? We don't know. Okay, stocks movement and price control of the agriculture foodstuffs for attracting private investment. जैसे कि now this, yes, here Atish has said it will lead to cash cropping pattern. Yes, that is the point. Cash cropping जितना बढ़ेगा, एक तरह से cash crops बढ़ावा भी होना चाहिए, उसके लिए एक argument है जो जिसपे मैं आऊंगा, लेकिन yes, it will increase the cash cropping pattern in India. Okay, and that may question the food security in India. But as of now, India is self-sufficient in the food security. So as of now, we don't need to worry about that. But there are certain extraordinary examples that I will give you in the later cases. या फिर अभी दे देता हूँ. जैसे कि देखो हमारे यहाँ पे कुछ क्रॉप्स ऐसे हैं, एक होता है कैश क्रॉप जो आपको बहुत पैसा देता है, पैसा देने वाला क्रॉप, और एक होता है जो आपके लाइवलीहुड के लिए क्रॉप लगता है. तो अगर हम कैश क्रॉप्स को ग्रो करें ज्यादा, तो हम उसमें से जो रेवेन्यू आएगा, शायद से हम उसमें से जो लाइवलीहुड के लिए क्रॉप्स लग रहा है, वो लाइवलीहुड के लिए जो लग रहा है आपको, सेरेल्स एंड ऑल दोस थिंग, हम शायद से उसको क्या कर सकते हैं, इसको इंपोर्ट कर सकते हैं. प्रॉफिट तो हमारे पास रहेगा क्योंकि उसका प्राइस जो है वो कम रहेगा. सो दिस इज पॉजिटिव वे आल्सो. लाइक मैं कैश क्रॉप्स को ग्रो करूंगा, मैं क्या करूंगा, यूरोप में, पूरे यूरोप में मैं पोमोग्रेनेट को बेचूंगा, यूरोप का मार्केट में कंट्रोल करूंगा, लाइक इंडिया इज डोमिनेटिंग, ऐसे हम समझ लेते हैं, या फिर ग्रेप्स को हम ये करते हैं. लेकिन तो ग्रेप्स का रेट और गेहूं का रेट, इसमें बहुत डिफरेंस है. तो शायद से मैं गेहूं इंपोर्ट कर सकता हूँ, जो गेहूं मुझे सस्ते में मिलेगा, लेकिन मेरा प्रॉफिट कैसे रह रहा है, क्योंकि ग्रेप्स मैंने ज्यादा कॉस्ट में बेचे. तो ये एक एग्जांपल हो सकता है. सो that has to be judged, and many of the agricultural economists are actually arguing for this pattern also. Moving on, I hope you have understood simple thing. And then there is a stock limit for prelims again. The bill prescribes that the basis for imposition of stock limits shall be the price rise. Stock limit कितना होगा वो किस पे डिसाइड करेगा? प्राइस राइज पे. And applicable only in cases of 100% increase in the retail price of horticulture produce. 100% increase जब होगा horticulture product में, उसी टाइम पे आप स्टॉक नहीं कर पाएंगे. Okay, 100% increase, बहुत ज्यादा है. और 50% increase in the retail price of non-perishable agricultural foodstuffs. Price rise shall be evaluated in relation to the price prevailing immediately preceding 12 months or average retail price of last 5 years. So price कैसे डिसाइड होगा? प्राइस लास्ट 5 ईयर का एवरेज निकाला जाएगा, या फिर जो पिछले 12 महीने थे उसमें कितना प्राइस रहा है, उसके हिसाब से वो डिसाइड किया जाएगा. अभी इसमें एक्सक्लूजन क्या है, एंड दिस इज इंटरेस्टिंग अगेन. Any orders regulating stock limits would not be applicable to processors or value chain participants of agricultural produce. Value chain participants or processors, like for example Macro या फिर लेज खाते होंगे ना, लेज का वेफर्स. सो लेज के लिए ये लिमिट नहीं होगा, वो कितना भी आलू रख सकता है. ओके, वो कितना भी आलू रखे तो उसको कोई लिमिट नहीं है. ओके, तो जनरली दैट इज द केस. सो लेज जनरली क्या करेगा, आलू का रेट जब कम होगा तभी वो आलू खरीद के लेगा ना. सो इसमें इम्पैक्ट अगेन सी वाइस वर्सा सोचो, ये होगा, देश सुनने में अच्छा लगता है, लेकिन इसका कॉन्ट्रोवर्सी ये क्या होगा, जो बाद में पोटैटो आएगा उसका रेट शायद से अपने आप कम हो जाएगा. Getting the point? If their stock limit does not exceed the overall ceiling of the installed processing capacity or demand for export. Okay, in case of exporters. So these are the 3 acts. Any questions up till now? Now let's move on to the interesting part, that is criticism. Yes, marginal farmers will be impacted the most because they don't have any infrastructure. देखो मेरे पास अगर 1 एकड़ फार्म है, उसमें मैंने अगर प्याज लगाया है और प्याज को बहुत कम रेट है, लेकिन मैं नौकरी के लिए नहीं हूं, मेरे घर में पैसे कहां से आने वाले? जिस जो भी रेट होगा उसी रेट में मैं बेचूंगा। समझ रहे हैं आप? जो भी रेट होगा मार्केट में उसमें मुझे बेचना है, क्योंकि मेरे पास दूसरा रेवेन्यू क्या है? रेवेन्यू सोर्स नहीं है। अगर मेरे पास दूसरा कोई रेवेन्यू सोर्स होगा तो शायद से मैं उसको रख सकता हूं। और 1 एकड़ फार्म वाला कितना रखेगा? अगर वो शेड बनाने जाता है तो भी उसके लिए उतना, उसके पास उतना इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के लिए या फिर कैपिटल नहीं है। इंडिया के फार्मर्स के साथ एक इंपॉर्टेंट प्रॉब्लम तो ये है ना कि उनके पास कैपिटल नहीं होता, और 1 एकड़ वाले को कौन कैपिटल देने वाला है? इन रियलिटी जाओ आप बैंक में, कैसे दिखेगा? यस, इवन नॉर्मल कंज्यूमर्स विल आल्सो बी अफेक्टेड ड्यू टू द होर्डिंग, क्योंकि आप पूरा का पूरा सप्लाई मैकेनिज्म को कंट्रोल कर रहे हैं। समझिए, आपने अगर एक वेयरहाउस को क्रिएट किया है और वेयरहाउस में अगर आप प्रोडक्ट बहुत दिनों तक रख सकते हैं, तो आप अपने आप में क्या करेंगे? अगर आपने एक हफ्ता भी मार्केट में सप्लाई कम कर दिया तो भी रेट कितना बढ़ने वाला है? गेटिंग दैट पॉइंट? वो बीच में न्यूज आया था ना, क्या था वो, धनिया जिसने उगाया था उसने कुछ तो 12 लाख कमाए या फिर 80,000 कमाए, ऐसे कुछ तो न्यूज था। आई डोंट नो एग्जैक्टली कितना कमाया उसने, बट ये क्यों हुआ? क्योंकि सप्लाई नहीं था ना। और अगर आप अभी आप देखेंगे तो आज जो सिचुएशन है फार्मिंग का, फॉर एग्जाम्पल लॉकडाउन में सबसे ज्यादा इंपैक्ट किस पे हुआ? कोई लॉकडाउन पे एग्रीकल्चर में से कौन कौन से सेक्टर्स पे ज्यादा इंपैक्ट हुआ बताइए? फार्मर्स एक कम्युनिटी है, आप मुझे स्पेसिफिकली बताइए। सोयाबीन कैन बी स्टॉप, सो उस पर उतना ज्यादा नहीं हुआ। एनिमल फार्मिंग, एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस और एनिमल हस्बेंड्री। दूध का एग्जांपल लीजिए ना, आप दूध का पता है? ओके, फ्रैंकली स्पीकिंग, लेट मी गिव यू एन गुड न्यूज आल्सो टू ऑल ऑफ यू। ऑन 17th to 20th of this month, ex-Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Prithviraj Chauhan, will be taking a lecture for you. Okay, so there you can I'm trying, he has given me a commitment, but I cannot be sure. You know the political people. Prithviraj Chauhan will speak on this part of the farmers bill. As you know, he is very good in what you can say studies and all those things, and I talked him today. So I'm trying to, he has told me that on 17th he will give me the confirmation, but he will surely take a lecture. That is what he has told me. So that is with regards to the Prithviraj Chauhan, and I'm also trying to get with some other leaders who can give you a real hand experience. Like for example, and now as I was giving you the example, so it was the milk sector. Okay, दूध पे कितना इम्पैक्ट हुआ आप मुझे बताइए? पुणे के चाय वाले, ओके, चाय के गाड़े बंद थे 3-4 महीने तक, तो दूध कहाँ गया? घर में कितना दूध जाता है? एक चाय वाला दिन में 20 लीटर 30 लीटर दूध लेता है, तो उस दूध का क्या हुआ? So that's how it gets impacted. Okay, so that's how it is. So generally with master mentors, as you have been thanking master mentors, I will try to have more and more experts on the topics. Okay, even I have tried to connect Nitin Desley, who has just recently won the, you know, the award for being the best teacher in the world, but he's right now very busy, but he has given again a commitment, not a commitment basically, but he has given a thing that he will surely take a lecture on the primary education, state of primary education in India. So my objective will always be to provide you as much as of the expert talks to you. So one of them is, so coming back to the key concerns. Now the first key concern is regarding the federalism. Just give me a moment. Just give me a moment. I will have water and I will return. So coming back, first point. Now this is in paper 2, quality. Okay, there can be questions in paper 3 also and paper 2 also. Remember, okay, this is a very, very fundamental issue of a federalism, because as said over here, as written over here, at the outset, the farmer bills are being viewed by state government as direct encroachment on the powers and functions of the state, as agriculture and markets are state subjects under the entries 14 and 28 respectively in list 2 of the Constitution of India. So they are clearly the state subject, and here the laws are being made by the central government. So this goes against the spirit of the cooperative federalism and federal polity as enshrined in the Constitution of India. Getting the point? So there can be a direct question about cooperative federalism. You have to give the examples of this, like even the NEET examination or university examinations for that sake. That we are finding we are always speaking about cooperative federalism, but we are not even able to decide whether we have to take the exams or not. So see over here what a mess it is. Like it is clearly they are the state subjects, but still the government is doing them because it considers trade to come under entry 33. That is the trade and commerce for food items, which will fall under entry 33 in the concurrent list, and hence attributing constitutional propriety. So this is not a constructive way of interpreting the Constitution. Understand? Like you are utilizing your powers which are there in the Constitution. Obviously, you can do that, but generally there is a constitutional precedent that you should be doing it in constructive way. Now you are overriding the state rights. Okay, so there is a question of federalism. Where is the federal polity as enshrined in the Constitution? Because Constitution has clearly given you the list. Now Article 33, trade and commerce, agreed, trade and commerce in food items, but now you are applying it to complete agriculture sector. Okay, so now whether it will go to the Supreme Court or not, I don't know. And again, I'm not sure about the Supreme Court judgments even. Although in accordance with Article 33, remember these entries, prelims. Okay, prelims के लिए Article entry 14, entry 28, list 2, then entry 33, लिख के रखो, news में है. Although in accordance with Article entry 33, interstate trade in food items would be subject to central legislation. Any laws directly affecting intrastate trade are direct interference with the state powers. Simple. And seriously curtail the efficacy of state legislations on the matter listed under the state list. Now see, point here, rather than leave the constitutional viewpoint, but think over here, in India, the conditions are altogether too diverse. One state varies with other state in an altogether different way. Like for example, in geography, you must have studied the land pattern. Somewhere it is alluvial soil, somewhere it is black soil, somewhere it is regular soil. So even with the basic things of agriculture, they are varying in India because of its diversity. And now you are applying a law which has to be applied to all over India. So that basically questions the diversity. Like I don't understand, this may sound to be criticism or even a political statement, but I'm not making a political statement. Here you have to understand why you need one nation when you can have a plural idea or plurality existing in the country. Okay, with all this plurality, you are always speaking about one nation, one this, one nation, one this. Why we cannot have one nation, multiple things? How does it matter? Okay, isn't it good to have multiple things? Now, it has been also pointed by the Sarkaria Commission, which you must have studied in paper 2, on center-state relations, that entry 33 has been used by the center to disproportionately empower itself in matter relating to agriculture. Specifically, Sarkaria Commission has spoken about the agriculture, and agriculture has to be the state subject. Understand? Because why the makers of Constitution put agriculture into the state subject? Because the circumstances are different at different levels. Understand? Circumstances are different at different levels. In every state, agriculture will be altogether different. In Maharashtra, like as I gave you the example of sugarcane, in Maharashtra, the sugarcane farmers are very prosperous compared to what is in Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh, it's like exploitation. In Maharashtra, people protest if they are not getting 2,700 or 3,000 per ton. Whereas in Uttar Pradesh, it is only 1400 or 1500. And in reality, it is because over there, cooperative has not developed. In Maharashtra, cooperative has developed. Okay, so why there is a need to do this? That is something which needs to be questioned when it comes to this government specifically, as to why we need one nation, one thing. We can have one nation, multiple things. That you have to understand, and that is what India is all about, or has been all about. Moving on. Since farmer bills have an overriding effect over state acts, questions regarding violation of federal structure of the constitution have arisen, as I have repetitively stated. The central government is bound to respect the autonomy of states in federal structure, and any constraints on their powers and finances is ill-advised. Another concern that has arisen is to why the stakeholders, which is the farmers, commission agents, states, were not consulted prior to the introduction of farmers bill in parliament. Just consider those coolies, Hamal, Jannapun Muntu, who are working in the APMCs. What will happen to them? Okay, so they were also the stakeholders or the vendors. So why they were not consulted, or why this bill was so much hurriedly brought into in the form of ordinance first of all, and then as you have to pass, you know the provision, I hope you have to pass the ordinance before 6 months, 6 weeks from the date of first sitting of the parliament in the next session. So you know that provisions, I hope. So those who stand to lose most from this farmers bill were not permitted to participate in the discussion on the subject, and the government has hastily passed the farmers bill in the parliament despite strong opposition. Now this has happened even, like, you should at least discuss these matters. These matters were not discussed in parliament. Obviously the government has the majority, government has the mandate, so obviously it means that the government has the will of the people. But does that will of people mean that you should be abruptly use it? Okay, that is not the point in democracy. It should be, everyone should be heard upon. So as no one was heard, we are facing the protests. And with protests, what is going to come? We don't know. So let's now move on to see individual limitations or individual loopholes of the bill. Okay, I hope you are not tired. Question stated above. As India is more inclined to socialist cause, PDS system will be affected due to contract farming. Yes, agreed. I agree with you. All the principles will be, Atish, I will agree with you. That yes, PDS system will be affected because there is holding and all those things. I even am not sure whether we will have PDS system after 10 years, frankly speaking. Now this cannot be, but it is the case. Because after 10 years, government may directly say, okay, we will give you basic minimum income. Okay, that was stated in 2014's economic survey also, basic minimum income. We will give you money, you purchase it. Now, with whether the government is giving 5,000, 10,000 rupees, and what is coming out of 10,000 rupees, that remains to be decided by the market. So yes, but in times to come, I am not sure whether PDS will be as it is right now. Moving on, the farmers, let's see each bill and the lacunae of each bill. Now, you have to understand why the farmers are protesting. So that is where we are there. Controversy and the protest. Controversy from the legislative point of view, that is one thing. That is what we have seen. That is regarding the federal structure, no discussions and deliberations. Why ordinance and then passing the bill in a hasty manner, no involvement of the groups involved, and then so that was legislative point of view. Now individually from the farmers point of view. So with regards to the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion Bill 2020, there are 3 points, very important fears that are there in the farmers. First, will it end the minimum support prices mechanism? Second, end of existing APMC system. And third, loss of revenue and livelihood. These are the 3 big fears amongst the farmers protesting. Again repeating, first, will this bill result into end of minimum support price? Because we will see that how it can happen. Then end of existing APMC system. Now APMCs may have not functioned properly, but we cannot disregard APMC completely also. They have their own contributions. Reforms are required, but whether replacement is required, that is something to be questioned. And loss of revenue and livelihood. How it is, let's see that. Losing the MSP is the biggest fear of the farmers. They fear exploitation by the large private players through holding and other malpractices. See, a farmer is a, as I give you the example, just consider कि किसी के कोई फार्मर है और उसकी बेटी की शादी है, तो उस केस में उसको किसी भी रेट पे बेचना पड़ेगा, because there is no provision in this bill which states that any buyer, whoever the buyer is, has to purchase it at certain price. If there is no provision for the minimum support price, let us say, let's take a condition. अभी जो APMC के जो ये हैं लाइसेंस्ड ट्रेडर्स हैं, ये कल इनके पास तो पैसा है, ये कल जाके क्या कर सकते हैं, ये APMC में खरीदेंगे नहीं, ये प्राइवेटली जाके खरीदेंगे, और जब प्राइवेटली जाके खरीदेंगे तो ऑब्वियसली यहाँ पे APMC का रूल एप्लीकेबल नहीं है, क्योंकि वो प्राइवेटली खरीदा है, वो खरीद सकता है, तो उस केस में वो किसी भी रेट में ले सकता है। और होल्डिंग का तो अपने आप में सवाल है कि अगर वो होल्ड करता है तो अपने आप डिमांड कम आ जाएगा। If people in Lasalgaon decide tomorrow, or Nasik district decide that we are not going to send the onion, what will happen? Okay, now this can happen, right? Okay, so holding and other malpractices are there. So large private players, when they are involved, because they have huge capital. Just imagine यार, अंबानी पूरा महाराष्ट्र का पूरा प्याज खरीद के कितने भी साल रख सकता है या फिर फ्री में बेच सकता है, राइट? रिलायंस फ्रेश में अगर कोई माल खराब हो जाता है, और अगर आपने देखा होगा ये जो भी बड़े ब्रांड्स है, रिलायंस फ्रेश हो या फिर ये डीमार्ट एंड ऑल दोस, डीमार्ट में पता नहीं सब्जी मिलता है कि नहीं, बट रिलायंस फ्रेश में जाएंगे तो वहां सब्जी आपको उतनी अच्छी क्वालिटी की नहीं मिलेगी और उनको फर्क भी नहीं पड़ता है, अंडरस्टैंड? बट दीज लार्ज प्राइवेट प्लेयर्स, इनको फर्क नहीं पड़ता है कि ये खराब भी हो जाए कोई माल तो, बिकॉज दे हैव द लार्ज कैपिटल. बट फॉर अ फार्मर इट मैटर्स. For a farmer, it matters a lot. So there is an apprehension regarding dismantling of the existing traditional grain markets with the establishment of private grain markets, which points to the end of assured procurement of food grains at MSP. मैं खरीदूंगा ही नहीं, मैं APMC में, मैं ट्रेडर हूँ, मैं क्यों APMC का खर्चा करूँ, मैं क्यों लाइसेंस पे ये करूँ वो करूँ, इससे अच्छा मैं डायरेक्टली खरीदूंगा. और इससे क्या होगा, तो MSP का सवाल ही नहीं रह रहा है. अभी सरकार बोलती है कि MSP दी जाएगी, बट पॉइंट ये है कि MSP लिखा नहीं है. अंडरस्टैंड? इट्स लाइक क्रोनोलॉजी को समझो, एज सिंपल. द फार्मर्स यूनियंस हैव रिस्पोंडेड टू सेंटर्स वन नेशन वन मार्केट कॉल विद वन नेशन वन MSP. दैट इज व्हाट दे हैव डिमांडेड. सो लेट्स हैव वन नेशन, लेट्स इवन हैव वन मार्केट, बट लेट्स आल्सो हैव वन MSP. द गवर्नमेंट इज सेइंग दैट MSP विल बी देयर, but it is not written in the law. So if it is not written in the law, then it brings out the ambiguity, and that is the largest fear of the farmers, because already the farmers are in a distressed stress, and as they are distressed, if you are not giving minimum price, then just understand what kind of exploitation it will be. No one, like आप बोलोगे कि मैं 100 रुपए में बेचना चाहता हूँ, आप किसी चीज का 100 रुपया कीमत है हो रहा है, लेकिन दूसरा जो प्राइवेट प्लेयर है वो शायद से 80 में उसको मांगेगा, उसको बेचना पड़ेगा क्योंकि उसके पास अभी 100 का गारंटी नहीं है. Okay, so the aim of Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Bill is to bring monopoly of the APMCs to end and give farmers the freedom to sell their farm produce to private persons. That we agree. This is one of the aims of this bill. But what happens with this bill is that the APMC system, let's say APMC system has contributed a large in Punjab for the Green Revolution and has started, and state already has well-developed infrastructure for the purposes of storage, transportation and farm. From farm to mandis and open marketing. Now these APMCs are, there are examples where APMC have performed well. Okay, and that's why you will see again that the states like Punjab are protesting a lot. Why they are protesting? The reasons are simple. Implementation of bill will effectively pave the way for disbanding of MSP regime as well as the food procurement regime. अभी food procurement को APMC से सरकार लेती थी, ये कौन करेगा अभी? So बेसिकली मंडी जो होती है अपनी APMC, उसको ये खत्म कर सकता है, because there is no provision mentioned in the act, and that is the fear with the farmers. At present, procurement by the government pressurizes the implementation of PDS, which will be jeopardized as a result of reduced government intervention. अभी आप बताइए, सरकार MSP नहीं है, मंडी नहीं है, तो पीडीएस का क्या होगा? आतिश ने अभी थोड़ी देर पहले सवाल पूछा था, जैसे एपी है इसकी वजह से ये क्या होगा? ओके महेश, वी विल टेक द क्वेश्चंस एट लास्ट. ओके, मतलब रेस किया आपने हैंड. तो the basis of market intervention by the government for procurement is price intelligence from the mandis. Okay, ना गवर्नमेंट किस हिसाब से इंटरवीन करता है, तो जो उसको इंटेलिजेंस मिलता है मंडी में से, and that initiates the government intervention when price start crashing. But now there are no mandis, so how will government intervene? Let us say ऑनियन, प्याज का एग्जांपल सबसे बढ़िया है. प्याज का दाम मार्केट में बढ़ गया तो गवर्नमेंट को पता चलता है, चलो अभी प्याज का भाव बढ़ रहा है तो क्या करना है, हमको एक्सपोर्ट रोकना है, कुछ करना है, ये करना है. लेकिन अभी मंडी में प्याज आ ही नहीं रहा, प्राइवेटली जा रहा है, तो गवर्नमेंट के पास इंटेलिजेंस कहां से आएगा? गेटिंग द पॉइंट. द न्यू बिल विल रिजल्ट इन लैक ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन ऑन मार्केट ट्रांजैक्शंस. किस तरह से आप बताओगे कि इंडिया इतना प्रोड्यूस करता है, वो करता है? आपका मंडी में जब आता है माल तो वो तो रिकॉर्ड पे जाता है. प्राइवेट प्लेयर्स आएंगे तो कितना माल प्रोड्यूस हुआ है, कितना बेचा गया है, उसके प्राइसेस क्या है, ये सब चीजें नहीं रहेंगी. Quantities and prices with the government in a way of facilitating the government to abdicate its responsibility of assuring MSP and PDS. Mandi system will also be rendered irrelevant, obviously, as I am being saying, resulting in collapse of price intelligence mechanism. मंडी से प्राइस डिसाइड होता है, पूरे इंडिया का प्राइस. फॉर एग्जांपल लासलगांव के मार्केट से पूरे इंडिया का ऑनियन मार्केट डिसाइड होता है ऑलमोस्ट. ओके, तो अगर वहां का ही मार्केट नहीं हो रहा है, चल रहा है, तो पूरे इंडिया में मार्केट किस तरह से जाएगा? और इसके लिए आपको ये समझना जरूरी है कि फार्मर इतना एजुकेटेड नहीं है कि वो ऑनलाइन जाके सब कुछ देखेगा. दिस इज समथिंग वेरी हाइपोथेटिकल दैट यू कंसीडर. फार्मर्स को व्हाट्सएप आ गया है, इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि वो हर ऐप यूज कर सकता है. ओके, एक्सपांशन ऑफ पब्लिक प्रोक्योरमेंट एट रिन्यूमरेटिव एमएसपी इज व्हाट द फार्मर्स आर डिमांडिंग. Okay, they are demanding public procurement at remunerative MSP. This is the demand of the farmer, whereas government is doing the opposite. Government is not speaking about the MSP. Okay, so that's why they are protesting. Although the government has verbally ensured that these systems will remain intact, this will do so only on paper and be rendered redundant in application by the legislations. Okay, मतलब ये सिर्फ कागज पे रहेगा, मतलब सरकार ने वर्बली कहा है. ये एक इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है. लॉ एक्ट में कहां है? ओके, जैसे दैट्स व्हाई आई ऑलवेज यूज से क्रोनोलॉजी समझिए. अगर एक्ट, क्योंकि प्रॉब्लम नहीं है ना, अगर सरकार कहती है कि ये ऐसे ही सिस्टम रहेगा तो आप एक्ट में क्यों नहीं ला रहे? तो एक्ट में क्यों नहीं ला रहे, तो मतलब यही है ना, दाल में कुछ काला है, तो उसकी वजह से तो फार्मर्स प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे हैं. देयर इज अनदर प्रोविजन इन द बिल, सेम बिल, which provides for the waiver of market cess, fee or levy for all other transaction made outside the APMC premises. Now, this provision aims at incentivizing traders to purchase farm produce outside mandi premises. However, such incentives will not alter the power relation, as it only harmfully affects the collective bargaining power of the farmers. Very, very, very important and interesting point. अगर आप मंडी में जब जाते हो तो फार्मर्स के साथ एटलीस्ट कुछ कलेक्टिव बार्गेनिंग पावर है, लेकिन जब मैं इंडिविजुअल फार्मर के पास जाता हूं तो मेरे पास क्या बार्गेनिंग पावर है? बार्गेनिंग पावर, आई होप यू अंडरस्टैंड. ओके, बार्गेनिंग पावर होना जरूरी होता है, तो बार्गेनिंग पावर कहाँ है यहाँ पे? तो दैट इज अनदर इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट दैट यू हैव टू कंसिडर. अगर आप इट्स वेरी सिंपल टू अंडरस्टैंड. देखो कि कलेक्टिवली कुछ चीज खरीदना और इंडिविजुअली कुछ चीज खरीदना. इंडिविजुअली ऑब्वियसली सस्ते में ही जाएगा. ओके, और आप क्या निगोशिएट करोगे? कल फॉर लेट्स से अगर कल जाके मंडी में एपीएमसी में किसी प्रोड्यूस का प्राइस बहुत ही कम हो गया, तो फार्मर्स में प्रोटेस्ट, फार्मर्स में स्टॉप. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल वो फार्मर प्रोटेस्ट दैट हैपेंड इन महाराष्ट्र, नहीं हमें बेचना ही नहीं है फार्म प्रोड्यूस एंड ऑल दोस थिंग्स. Okay, I am not supporting any protest or something like that, but किया था फार्मर्स ने, राइट? वो क्यों किया? क्योंकि एपीएमसी में नहीं भेजेंगे ना, लेकिन इंडिविजुअल खरीद रहे हैं, तो ये बार्गेनिंग पावर का क्या हो गया? So APMCs certainly have shortcomings of their own, agreed. However, their role in ensuring the availability of an MSP for farmers cannot be overlooked. That you have to write in your answer. Remember this. APMC provide a platform for farmers for collective bargaining, not only on price matters, but also on non-price issues like grading, moisture, measurement, weighing, etc. So basically, APMC is also providing a bargaining power. You will not find this point in any other place. If you have read, you have to read lot many articles for this to come up with this points. Creation of two, now this will also result into creation of two parallel and extremely distinct markets with set of rules. Is one of the key problems with this bill, that you will have a parallel market. You have created a parallel market, and then if you have created a parallel market, why will APMC survive? This is because APMCs have stringent requirements of license, constant monitoring, as well as market fee, whereas the new private marketplace will be unregulated. कैसे regulate करेंगे? Is there any provision for regulation? Or even if you can just simply say, आप गवर्नमेंट के टैक्स के व्यू पॉइंट से भी देखिए ना, कि यहाँ पे कैश पैसा दे दिया, इसका अकाउंटेबिलिटी क्या हो गया कैश पैसे का? ये lack of government oversight and market fees. Furthermore, this will be detrimental for the states, as large part of the revenue generated from the fees or cess on transaction in the farm produce in APMC market. So state taxes, which does not come under GST, will also be impacted. This revenue is utilized by states for developing rural roads and linkages with the mandis. So that with the states will be deprived of its revenue share. Now, for that, just I have given you the example. The revenue collected by Punjab in 2019-20 from trade fees was estimated at rupees 3,600 crore. A 2.5 commission, 5% commission is paid by FCI to Arthias. Arthias are the middlemen under the Punjab APMC Act. मैंने पंजाब का example दिया है वहाँ पे. The livelihood of these Arthias, as well as the workers engaged in loading, packaging, unloading activities are also at stake with the disintegration of Mandi system. So as I said, there are a lot of issues. So this is one of them. That there are a lot many people involved in the Mandis, and all of those are at the verge of losing their jobs and all, and losing their employment. One objective of the farmer bill was to eliminate the middlemen who are responsible for exploitation of farmers. Yes, it was there. However, attributing only a negative role to these commission agents is not correct, as farmers often resort to them for loans instead of banks for the fear of losing their land to banks, and also because banks are hesitant to lend to small farmers. So this is also another important point. If you see the practical reality of India, 2 एकड़ वाले फार्म को बैंक वाला कहाँ खड़ा करने वाला है? Okay, क्या लोन मिलने वाला है उसको? Obviously, he is not going to get anything. So if that is the case, then we have to think on these points, that always you cannot say, like in Maharashtra they said साहूकार की should be banned, but अगर घर में कोई बीमार पड़ रहा है फार्मर के, तो वो किसके पास जाएगा? बैंक के पास जाएगा क्या? मेरी बेटी की शादी है, मुझे 10,000 रुपए चाहिए, 5,000 रुपए चाहिए, घर में कुछ तो हुआ, कोई बीमार है, इसके लिए तो बैंक लोन नहीं देती ना. तो इसके लिए हर बार आप निगेटिवली नहीं देख सकते उसके रोल को. Obviously there are negatives, but there are also certain positives that cannot be overlooked. Always remember that there are always two sides to a coin. That is the simple saying. It is likely that the reforms do not do away with the middlemen at all, as the same and newer entities will now have the freedom to operate outside the mandis without any regulations. वो आपको एक एग्जांपल देता हूँ. सरकार ने क्या कहा कि ऑनलाइन करेंगे, बराबर है. ऑनलाइन सब महाराष्ट्र गवर्नमेंट ने बीच में लोन का फॉर्म भरना है, क्या करना है, सब ऑनलाइन किया. ऑनलाइन किया, इसमें क्या शुरू हुआ? एजेंट शुरू हुए कि नहीं? एजेंट शुरू हुए कि नहीं, जो ऑनलाइन फॉर्म भर के देगा, ये देगा, वो देगा. ओके, तो ऑनलाइन मतलब यहाँ से क्या हो रहा है कि बीच में फॉर एग्जांपल हर गांव में एक एजेंट बनेगा जो बड़े व्यापारी के लिए काम करेगा, और वो बोलेगा ठीक है, मैं मिडलमैन तो जाना था, वो बीच व्यापारी हर बार तो गांव में नहीं आएगा. यहाँ क्या होने वाला है? अपने आप एक मिडलमैन फिर से क्रिएट होने वाला है. सो मिडलमैन जो जाने का जो पॉइंट था वो कहाँ जा रहा है? बिकॉज इन रियलिटी वी आर स्पीकिंग इन टर्म्स ऑफ रियलिटी, एंड व्हेन वी सी द प्रोटेस्ट एंड ऑल दोस थिंग्स, वी हैव टू सी द रियल साइड at large. Additionally, giving due regard to the small scale of land holdings of the farmers in Punjab and Haryana, it does not seem as if the large private corporations would deal directly with the small and marginal farmers. Very, very important point. मैंने जैसे पहले एग्जांपल दिया कि 82.5% people in India are having a land which is less than 5 acres. And who is going to deal with a person having less than 5 acres land? Okay, तो यहाँ middleman ही आएगा. ओके, और कॉन्ट्रैक्टर्स अपने आप बन जाएंगे। और दूसरा एक है कि सरकार ने ऑल इंडिया मार्केट बनाने के लिए ई नाम नाम का एक ऐप भी बनाया था। ओके, दिस सेंट्रल एजेंसी बनाई थी। ओके, ई नाम, ओके, नेशनल एग्रीकल्चर मार्केट, जहां पे ऑनलाइन ट्रेडिंग प्लेटफॉर्म है। उसका क्या हुआ? अभी तो वो तो अपने आप ही बंद हो रहा है। ओके, सो दीज आर द, एंड फर्दरमोर this system is dependent on physical mandi system, and without much trade in mandis, uncertainty as to farmers participation in enam also arises. सरकार ने इनाम 2016 में चालू किया, 4 साल में उसका क्या फायदा हुआ? So the fate of enam once private electronic trading platforms are established by private players will be questioned. Although the new farmer bill will permit Uttar Pradesh farmers to sell their produce in Karnataka if they get better remuneration prices, it fails to take into consideration the practical problems with such a model. Aren't there practical problems? आप मुझे बताओ, यूपी का आलू अगर कोई किसी फार्मर को बेचना है महाराष्ट्र में, तो क्या वो खुद लेके आएगा? और लेके आएगा तो कितना कॉस्ट होगा उसका? और इतना लैंड होल्डिंग कहाँ है हमारे यहाँ पे कि एक फार्मर 10-15 ट्रक भेज रहा है? ऐसा है तो ठीक है, एक फार्मर का निकल रहा है लेट्स से 50, 60, 80, 100, 200 बोरिया, 200 बोरियों के लिए वो महाराष्ट्र में आएगा क्या? पॉसिबल तो है, वो बेच सकता है, लेकिन प्रैक्टिकली आप इसको देखो कि क्या ये रियली फिजिबल है? तो इसमें कौन ज्यादा बेनिफिट हो रहा है? इट इज नॉट द मार्जिनल फार्मर्स, स्मॉल फार्मर्स, but these are mostly the provisions for the big capital owners. So according to the 2015-16 census, as I said, 86.2% of small and medium scale farmers own less than 2 hectares of the land. So 5 और 2 के बीच में बहुत से लोग ऐसे हैं। Even in Maharashtra, you may be knowing, there is not a, हर किसी का कोई 70-80 एकड़ जमीन नहीं है। और जब 70-80 एकड़ है तब ठीक है कि आप कॉन्ट्रैक्ट फार्मिंग करें, ये करे वो करे, लेकिन इस केस में नहीं होगा। आपका 1 एकड़ लैंड है और 1 एकड़ में ऑनियन आ रहा है और आप लेके जा रहे हो आंध्रा में, ये नहीं हो सकता। सो मिडलमैन आएगा ही। Keeping their small land holdings and farm output in mind, it does not seem feasible for these farmers to sell their agriculture produce outside their mandi or district when MSP is not a legal guarantee. मतलब आप लेके आए महाराष्ट्र में बेचने के लिए आलू, और आपको यहाँ आने के बाद पता चल गया कि रेट हो गया कम, तो क्या करेंगे आप? Okay, so just giving you an examples. The MSP system acts as a benchmark for the farmers to negotiate their prices, and APMC system is an important medium for price discovery at local level. Remember that line. Further, for a large number of small and marginal farmers who would never be attractive to corporate buyers, APMC mandis are the last resort. So think from the viewpoint of this 86.2% farmers. And here again, I will give you an example of Bihar. Okay, Bihar model. Bihar had repealed the APMC Act in 2006. And what happened? This is a case study of Bihar. I have looked into too much, spent whole day for this, making this. So I am giving you an example of Bihar. Bihar ने repeal of APMC Act किया 2006 में, और हुआ क्या? तो enabling free private trade बिहार में शुरू हो गया, लेकिन new system failed to either help the farm or boost private investment in development of agriculture. दोनों ही नहीं हुआ। बिहार का एग्जाम्पल आज अगर आप देखेंगे, कैलकुलेशन करेंगे और फिगर्स देखेंगे तो आपको कुछ नहीं दिखेगा। 2006 से 2020 तक का अगर आप रिपोर्ट देखेंगे तो भी 14 साल में कुछ नहीं है। Year after year, farmers have been forced to distress sell their produce much below the MSP. Okay, much below the MSP, just because there is no APMCs. Full control of agriculture produce has been assumed by private traders who have set up small markets and charge commission from farmers. And this is, I am giving you an example of, आपको ज्यादा समझने के लिए मैंने शुगर केन का एग्जांपल दिया। यूपी में कोऑपरेटिव ना होने की वजह से जो प्राइवेट कारखाने हैं, महाराष्ट्र में भी अभी बहुत हुए हैं, लेकिन यहाँ पे कोऑपरेटिव ज्यादा डोमिनेंट है, लेकिन वहां पे प्राइवेट शुगर मिल्स हैं जो बहुत कम रेट देती है। मतलब यहाँ अगर 2700-3000 मिल रहा है तो भी फार्मर्स प्रोटेस्ट करते हैं। उसके बाद कुछ होता है पॉलिटिकली, बिकॉज फार्मर्स आर हैविंग बार्गेनिंग पावर, एंड ऑब्वियसली शुगर बेल्ट है तो उसकी वजह से पॉलिटिक्स भी यहाँ इन्फ्लुएंस होता है। लेकिन जहाँ पे एक प्राइवेट सिंगल प्लेयर आता है जिसका पॉलिटिक्स से कुछ लेना देना, पॉलिटिक्स से होता है लेना लेकिन डायरेक्टली पॉलिटिकल फोर्स नहीं है, तो उस केस में एक्सप्लॉयटेशन ही होता है। यूपी में आपको 1400 या 1700 रुपए के ऊपर नहीं मिलता है गन्ने के लिए, जबकि महाराष्ट्र में 1000 रुपए से ज्यादा है. So this is the difference that you are speaking, that we are speaking about. So Bihar is one of the example. Another aspect that the bill seems to ignore is that farmers lack sufficient capital. Understand this. Understanding of free market forces. Farmer को कैसे पता होगा क्या रेट है क्या नहीं है? Okay, you cannot say that it is a digital age. Agreed, it is a digital age, but digital age is limited to WhatsApp or YouTube or what you can say Telegram and all those things. तो आप लोग भी देख लो ना, मैंने देखता हूँ आप बहुत से लोग आज भी फेसबुक पे क्या कर रहे हैं, पिछले जन्म में कौन था. ओके, आज जबकि आपको पता है ये एल्गोरिदम होता है, तो लोग कर रहे हैं, सब है. स्टेटस रखने के लिए डिजिटल हो चुके हैं, अपने व्हाट्सएप का स्टेटस, अपने फेसबुक की स्टोरी ये रखने के लिए डिजिटल हो गए. लेकिन क्या डिजिटल के फिनोमिनल्स उनको समझ में आ रहे हैं? डू दे अंडरस्टैंड द मार्केट फोर्सेस, or are they having that avenue even that they will be looking into the market every day and then they will decide? As lack of capital, understanding of market forces, price and market fluctuations, as well as electronic and internet connectivity, lack of storage facilities with farmer will also encourage the farmers to sell their product to corporations at lower price soon after the harvest. Okay, so these all points are there. Because farmer in India, if you don't have money, आप इमेजिन कीजिए किसी भी किसान को अगर सैलरी नहीं है तो 3 महीने उसको घर चलाना होता है. 3 मिनिमम कोई भी अगर आप क्रॉप लेते हैं तो 3 महीने के जब आप घर चलाना है तो उस समय में पैसा कहाँ से लाएंगे? ओके, तो वो कहीं से कर्जा ले रहा है, क्या कर रहा है, तो उसको चुकाना है. उसके बाद उसका साइकिल इस तरह से चलता रहता है. That's why there are problems. So further point, private traders might also insist on purchasing produce immediately after harvest when prices are low. बाद में शायद से वो खरीदे ना. ओके, अगर उनके लिए प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. देखो, these are the people who are having the capital, so there is no problem for them. The problem is for the farmer because he is not having capital. वो रख नहीं सकता उसको. Okay, there is also a possibility that corporations will buy food grains from states with surplus grains like Punjab at lower prices and sell these at a later time to grain deficient states at higher prices, resulting in market distortion and reduced income for farmers. So वो खरीदेंगे सस्ते में और बेचेंगे महंगे में, ऐसा भी हो सकता है. मैं स्टॉक उठा लूं अभी दिस वन, पंजाब से मैं गेहूं खरीदूंगा और मैं शायद से साउथ इंडिया में जाके बेचूंगा, या साउथ इंडिया में से राइस लूंगा और मैं दूसरे स्टेट में बेचूंगा. These all things can happen. In state like Punjab, the average land holding is just 3.62. Average farming depth for a small farmer is 5,57,000. For a marginal farmer, it is 2,76,000. So that is the load that the farmers in the one of the most agriculturally progressive states are having. The depth loan उतना उन पे है averagely. आप consider कर सकते हैं बाकी states का क्या situation होगा. Burdening the small and marginal farmers with the complexities of electronic trade and commercial technologies, while weaning away the MSP would not be a wise move. So point is, आप electronic complexities में लाओ, commercial technicalities सब ठीक है, लेकिन without MSP, will it be a wise move? That is the point that we should be thinking about this particular act. And despite raging COVID-19 pandemic in April-May, exemplary management skills were displayed by Punjab in procuring 100% of the produce. Okay, this year, out of 127.45 lakh tons of wheat purchased in mandis in Punjab, only 0.5% was bought by private traders. Now, if that is the percentage, like where it is 99.42% is being sold to the mandis, then why we are thinking about getting rid of mandis? So that really raises the question as to why this is more or less for the private traders. This bill is more or less for the private traders, big private traders. Tomorrow Reliance can enter, tomorrow Adani can enter. They have entered all sectors. They can enter into the other sectors also. So these are the issues with the first bill. Now let's move on to the second. That is the Farmers Agreement on Price Assurance and Service Act. I hope you had your dinner. नहीं हुआ है तो बाद में कर लेना. हम थोड़ा सा बाकी है. Now, Farmers Empowerment Protection Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Service Act 2020. There are three primary concerns against the negotiating power of the parties involved. देखो, एक कॉन्ट्रैक्ट फार्मिंग में है और एक तरफ आपका एक बड़ा ग्रुप है जो आपके साथ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कर रहा है, उसके पास बहुत से रिसोर्सेस है, और एक तरफ आपका फार्मर है. ओके, क्या आप निगोशिएटिंग पावर होगा उसके पास? विल ही इवन बी एबल टू अफोर्ड अ लॉयर? ओके, जस्ट अंडरस्टैंड, मतलब वो क्या अपना केस रख सकता है उसके सामने. एंड एज वी ऑल नो, इन इंडिया जस्टिस इज फॉर whom? अर्नब गोस्वामी. द एग्जाम्पल इज वेरी रिलेवेंट, राइट? मतलब कितने लोग जेल में जा रहे हैं तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट उसमें नहीं देख रहा है, बट इन अर्नब गोस्वामी केस, हाई प्रोफाइल केस, कोर्ट क्या बोलता है? एक दिन में सुनता है और डिसीजन क्या देता है? बेल. बाकी लोग कितने बिना बिल के हैं? So this all has to be considered. अब यही लॉजिक अगर आप कॉन्ट्रैक्ट फार्मिंग में भी लगाएंगे तो भी आपको रिलेवेंट लगेगा अपने आप. So negotiating power is one of the important thing. Second is determination of quality parameters by the parties involved. How you are going to? Yes, Atish, you had someone, Ashutosh had asked, what about what you can say? How to grade? First of all, who will decide determining the quality parameters? Like for example, you have made a contract that this will be a quality and that will be the rate, and there is certain hiccups. So who will determine the parameters of that quality? Okay, and again, if there is a conflict, then who will go into negotiation? So farmer के पास इतना time नहीं है और resources भी नहीं है. Time का छोड़ो, लेकिन resources नहीं है कि वो इतना argue करे, कि वो इतना पढ़ा लिखा है. अगर agreement English में हो रहा है तो आप समझिए मराठी भी कितने farmers पढ़ सकते हैं. Okay, dispute resolution beyond ambit of judicial review. Now this is third very interesting point. मतलब dispute का resolution किया, लेकिन वो judicial review में नहीं आएगा. जो dispute का judgment होगा वही final होगा. इसमें आप समझ सकते हैं there will be a lot of bureaucracy involved, and as of now अगर मैं बोलूं तो bureaucracy का side किसके साथ होता है वो हम जानते हैं. Getting the point? So although the farming agreement bill aims at protecting farmers against the price exploitation and the increasing choice in sale, it does not take into account that individual farmers, especially small farmers or marginal farmers, might not be equipped to negotiate with private corporations to ensure themselves a fair price. That is very, very simple thing. 85% of the people don't have that capacity to negotiate, because negotiation is not a simple thing. You cannot fight with understand, you need a lawyer like Harish Sadhvi. He charges in crores. Okay, और या फिर पहले राम जेठमलानी होते थे. आपको एग्जांपल देता हूँ. For 5 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, Ram Jeethmalani used to charge 20 lakh rupees. Okay, 20 lakh rupees. Okay, he used to bring it in the writing, whatever his arguments used to be there, वो लिख के लाते थे. अभी वो नहीं रहे, और उसके लिए 15 मिनट का आर्ग्यूमेंट हुआ तो वो 20 लाख, 16वां मिनट के लिए वो पैसे लगाते थे. और आप इमेजिन कर सकते हैं कि अर्नब गोस्वामी के हरीश साळवे लॉयर है, तो हरीश साळवे ने कितने पैसे लिए होंगे बेल के लिए बस. तो ये सब चीजें जो है ये मैटर करती हैं. तो दैट्स व्हाई वी हैव टू, मैं हमेशा जो एग्जांपल देता हूं, आप लोगों ने बहुत बार सुना होगा, वो यही है कि क्या बुलेट ट्रेन में लोकल का डिब्बा होगा, और होगा तो फिर शायद से ये हमारा डेवलपमेंट है, अदरवाइज इट इज फॉर समवन एल्स. As a consequences of adoption of contract farming policy, the power balance shifts from the farmer to private companies, and the farmer might end up being the weaker players in the negotiation process. A farmer might be pushed to become a landowning tenant under the interest of corporates. क्या हो सकता है? ज्यादा से ज्यादा वो tenant बन जाएगा अपने आप. Remember British East India, sorry, this one, चंपारण्य सत्याग्रह. ओके, यहाँ एक प्रोविजन आपको बताना भूल गया. एक प्रोविजन है कॉन्ट्रैक्ट फार्मिंग में कि उसकी जमीन कभी गारंटी में नहीं ली जाएगी, उसकी जमीन नहीं जाएगी, लेकिन फार्मर अगर एडवांस लेता है तो ही हैज टू प्रोड्यूस दैट ओनली. सो उसका अपने जो एक राइट है, वो राइट कहीं ना कहीं यहाँ अंडरमाइन होगा. और जो कि हम बात कर रहे हैं, मैं 15% फार्मर्स की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, मैं 85% फार्मर्स की बात कर रहा हूँ. 85% फार्मर्स के लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है. मूविंग ऑन. The bill does not provide any mechanism for price fixation leading to apprehensions regarding the intent behind giving a free hand to these private corporations. Why not? मतलब these private corporations किसी भी rate पे purchase कर सकते, क्यों नहीं, इनको क्यों नहीं MSP? That's why MSP is such a big thing, or that's why these many protest. And there is concern because there are small land holdings. Although protection against the exploitation is stated objective of the bill, how can a small and marginal farmer not be fearful of exploitation while engaging with large retailers and powerful industrialists? That is the question that we have to raise. According to the provisions of the bill, the quality and grade measures and the standard of farming produce can be mutually agreed upon by both the parties to the agreement. However, when the private sponsor attempts to bring in uniformity, the quality aspect might be affected, consequently impacting the already distorted agroecological diversity in India. So it is privately, like for example, for a particular quality, I have to use an excessive fertilizers, or I have to get that amount of production. So I will use excessive fertilizers. But then what will happen? Land will be degraded. And who will be responsible for that land degradation? Isn't it a simple question? Right? As a private sponsors are, you will try to bring out, you will say large amount of production, you will use fertilizers, that and all those things. But once a farmer is deprived of that land, if the land is degraded, what will farmer do in the next time? Another concern that arises relates to the three-tier dispute settlement prescribed by the bill. 3 लेवल का dispute redressal है इसमें contract में. पहले conciliation board, उसके बाद SDM और तीसरा collector और additional collector. तो इनमें से आप तो होने वाले हो. ओके, ऐसे कंसिडर करता हूं. ओके, सरकार लॉ बनेगा तो आपके पास ये रोल आने वाला है. कलेक्टर बन जाओगे तो यू विल बी देयर. आई होप यू विल टेक द डिसीजन सेंसिटिवली, क्योंकि मुझे नहीं लगता कि सरकार इसमें मेजर कोई चेंजेस करेगी. बट बी सेंसिटिव. ओके, एवरी टाइम इन माय लेक्चर आई वुड बी ग्रेटफुल व्हेन यू बिकम एन IAS, you don't give up your principles and you don't give away your duty towards the constitution. You are bound by constitution and not by an individual. Okay, always remember that. Okay, so be an ethical person. Moving on. Farmer-buyer contracts will effectively be removed from the ambit of civil court as well as judicial review by the creation of bureaucrat-led dispute resolution mechanism. And this is really a dangerous thing. I'm using the word dangerous specifically over here because it is bureaucrat-led. There is no judiciary. And if there is no judiciary, then go back and look into the history of India and the bureaucracy, and you will get your answers to whom it has worked for. Okay. The usage of shall in the bill points to the mandatory nature of this provision. Additionally, the majority of farmers lack the resources required for fighting legal battles against the large private corporations. So that is regarding the second bill. And now we have the last bill, that is the Essential Commodities Amendment Bill, Bill 2020. So the act is older, but यहाँ पे amendment किया गया है. One of the foremost concerns that have arisen in the bill to this, arisen in relation to this bill, is regarding hoarding and black marketing. Okay, hoarding and black marketing. वो आपने मनोज कुमार का पिक्चर देखा होगा. कौन सा गाना है उसमें? मेरे देश की धरती. उसमें होर्डिंग एंड ब्लैक मार्केटिंग दिखाया गया है कि वो लोग किस तरह पुराने जमाने में होता था कि आप होर्ड करके रखो या फिर ब्लैक मार्केट करो. लेकिन now that again is being raised over here because simply you are pacifying this act. Okay, you are pacifying this act to a larger extent. Since the bill eases the restrictions imposed on the stock limits relating to the prescribed food items, there is increasing fear of hoarding of food items by the exporters, processors, and traders during the harvest season when prices are lower until a later time when the prices tend to increase. Simple. You have infrastructure, you can hoard it for a number of times. I'm saying you, आप just imagine कीजिए कि ट्रेडर ने हफ्ते भर के लिए वो चीज रोक दी. ओके, हफ्ते भर के लिए प्रोडक्ट मार्केट में नहीं लाया. उसका वेयर हाउस है, आराम से प्रोडक्ट ले रहा है. क्या फ्लक्चुएशंस होंगे मार्केट में दोनों साइड से, कंज्यूमर के लिए भी एंड एट द एंड रिसीवर के लिए भी. Since states would no longer have information and intelligence about the availability of the stocks within the state, this could also result in undermining the food security, as I've said, that we have seen earlier also. And it will adversely affect the farmers as well as the consumers. The bill has no substantial benefits for either the consumer or the farmers. It legally permits private companies to stock food items without restriction on stock limit, except in circumstances of war, grave natural calamities, extraordinary price rise. Just think Reliance is hoarding the or keeping it. Like पूरा का पूरा grapes है. अभी कौन सा फल आ रहा है मार्केट में? इस टाइम पे कौन सा होता है? लाइक ग्रेप्स आएंगे अभी. पूरे के पूरे ग्रेप्स रिलायंस ने ले लिए या फिर अदानी ने ले लिए. बाकी को लोगों के लिए बेचने के लिए है ही नहीं कुछ. ओके, और ग्रेप्स क्या कर रहे हैं वो 8 दिन के लिए मार्केट में नहीं ला रहे. कितना रेट बढ़ेगा? एंड दे कैन स्टॉक टू व्हाटएवर लिमिट दे वांट. They can purchase all the grapes in Maharashtra. There is no limitation to that, and they can keep it for whatever amount of time they want to. Okay, so no one is going to benefit out of it. The bill is likely to affect the prices of food commodities, resulting in rising in prices, adversely affecting the consumers as well as subsidies for the PDS. Serious food problems are likely to arise during extraordinary circumstances, as the government will not have the requisite information relating to who, where, when, and how much stock exists. This is, I don't know. This is like just simply the kind of lockdown that government had. The government never realized the lockdown that it is going. There are people without home in India. A large number of people in Mumbai live without home. They will migrate to their states by walking. It is same way. If there is an extraordinary situation, let us say there is a flood or drought or something like this, and the food production is hampered. Now, in that case, if government has to procure, where will the government get the information? Because government does not know now who is holding what and what amount of stock it is existing. So we are going back again in like 70s. We are going negative. So that's why this act was passed, so as not to have the hoarding, but that can happen with this. That is again a complexity involved. There will be no machinery to verify the stock limits in circumstances specified for the regulation. And the bill also provides for exclusion of value chain participants if their stock limit remains within their installed capacity, and exporters if they can show demand for export. Like for, it is again the same thing. You can hoard anything that you want. आप कितना भी रख सकते हो. कल जाके लेज वाला बोलेगा, लेज वाला पूरा का पूरा यूपी का पोटैटो ले लेगा और बोलेगा ये मेरे लिमिट में आता है, मैं इतने आलू चिप्स बेच सकता हूँ. तो होगा क्या? हमको आलू नहीं मिलेगा खाने के लिए, लेकिन चिप्स शायद से मिल सकते हैं. Okay, that can happen with this. So I hope you understand the things that are happening. Now see, directly, indirectly, what kind of situation we are getting into? Like हम natural खाने की जगह unnatural processed food शायद से आगे जाके खा सकते हैं. ऐसा situation दिख रहा है. However, the rationale behind such exclusion is unclear as to when extraordinary situations may arise. An essential commodity like food must not be adversely affected, and smooth supply must be maintained. But there is no provision because the government will not know, and there is no machinery that will ensure and verify these value chain participants and exporters are limiting the stocks in accordance with the rules prescribed. So we don't have, there is no provision for mechanism. The exporter has to maintain this record with the government or with himself at least. Okay, the exporter will just say, there is a demand for export and I am holding this for the export at certain time. So that will not lead to anything. And the central government has discretion even in extraordinary circumstances to exercise regulation, as can be understood from the use of may. So may, it is ambiguity. So that's what the last point is. Furthermore, extraordinary circumstances are not defined properly. So whenever there is no definition, then we start to raise the questions regarding the intention of the statute. It is pertinent here to refer to the recent ban on the export of onions amid the increasing price of onions. Like we don't know. Okay, like ऑनियन का प्राइस बढ़ रहा था और फिर बाद में क्या कर दिया? बैन कर दिया एक्सपोर्ट बैन कर दिया, मार्केट डाउन, फार्मर इंपैक्टेड. सच अ डिसीजन पता नहीं होता ना ये किसके बेनिफिट के लिए है. ओके, अगर आपने कम रेट में खरीदा फिर बाद में बोल दिया नहीं, कुछ 8 दिन के लिए आपने बोल दिया एक्सपोर्ट बैन कर दिया. ओके, एक्सपोर्ट बैन, मार्केट डाउन, ट्रेडर ने पूरा खरीद लिया ऑनियन और अभी आपने बोल दिया एक्सपोर्ट चालू, मार्केट फिर से अप, और बेच कौन रहा है? यहाँ प्रॉफिट किसके पास है? ट्रेडर के पास. सो दिस काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स जनरली कास्ट द डाउट. नाउ लेट्स मूव ऑन टू द फाइनल पार्ट. आई होप यू आर नॉट टायर्ड अगेन. ओके, यू आर होल्डिंग इट at this time. This is feasible propositions of farmer bill. Let us see what is possible. Okay, as one thing from the UPSC's point of view, we are going to know, we know in even by the government's narratives and all those things, that they are not going to take away the bill. There will be certain reformations in the bill. Let us see what are the feasible propositions for the farmers bill. Social, economic, political, and cultural context of each state will determine the implications of this farmers bill. Okay, so it is not going to be a national level kind of thing. It will be an individualistic thing. Implementation of reforms will play a major role in determining the efficiency and benefits of the reforms. We don't know how, as of now, I cannot predict how they will be implemented. They may be implemented in positive way, they may be implemented in negative way. State supervision will be necessary for protecting the interest of the farmers as well as the consumers. Agriculture in India is subject to twin problems of floods and drought simultaneously. We all know that. And in such circumstances, there is a necessity to protect the income of the farmers. So like farmers, like as you know right now in Maharashtra, even in my own farm, I have not visited, but I came to know that whole of the cotton farm has been destroyed. Now that pains. Okay, that creates a pain. Like we never had rain. Like coming from the Beed district and Marathwada region, we were never having the rain, and now this year we had excessive rains that destroyed altogether our crops. So floods and droughts are simultaneous. So there is a necessity. But what can be done? Now the government, like in Maharashtra, they granted 20,000 rupees. So our 20,000 is 20,000 the value even? Okay, and again, government even doesn't have the money to do that. So in some way or the other, we have to create a mechanism so as to protect the farmers. Legislations protecting farmers from crop damage and loss caused by drought, floods, and cyclones, and ensuring income in such calamities through state support are imperative in India. Now, there are Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana and all those things. But when you go through the details of that, because as I'm teaching the UPSC, I cannot be in the activist mood to tell you the realities of this insurance policies, but they are not distributed equally and all those things. So we need a proper legislation that will protect the farmers from this, because farmers are there's no point in repeating and saying again and again that the farmers are the backbone of India or of any society. Without farmers, you cannot have the society, existing society. You may have mechanization of agriculture and all those things, but still you will require someone who does the farming. The critical nature, and with the increasing population, this issue will become much more significant. The critical nature of the remunerative prices for farmers must be realized, and the statutory framework must be developed for guaranteeing the same. The Commission for Agriculture Cost and Prices in its report had highlighted the role of government intervention for ensuring remunerative prices to farmers and suggested to make MSP a legal right. So that is, like someone asked, Ashutosh, you asked that why it is not legal. So we are speaking here that it should be made a legal right. That is what we are speaking about. Now the union government has tried to alleviate the fears of farmers by verbally guaranteeing the continuation of MNC mechanism. However, it has been hesitant to add such guarantee to the text of the farmers' bills. So that is what you must be reading every day in the newspaper. Giving legal backing to the MSP as a right of farmers may go a long way in instilling a trust in government policies, because trust is very important, and trust deficit will really hamper the farmers a lot. So there government, whenever government may have good intentions. I'm not saying government is not having a good intention. There are certain provisions which are very good. Okay, like for example, the things can be taken positively also, but there should be certain guarantee. It should be done in a way of incentivizing, not in the form of punishment. What is happening right now is that farmers are seeing this bills as a punishment, because there is no point in there is no mention of MSP. If MSP would have been, then farmers would have been more than happy, frankly speaking. But why then the government is hesitating in putting the point of MSP? Okay, so giving legal backing to the MSP is something very important. And the Swaminathan committee which was significant, MS Swaminathan, I hope. The Swaminathan committee had advocated for increasing the MSP at 50% higher than the cost of production. The aim of reforms, therefore, should be widening the scope of MSP and making it a legal right, rather than making it a redundant through new policies, which has been a continuous demand of farmers for years. Rather, every now and then the people are demanding that there should be MSP, and MSPs actually benefit the farmers as well as the consumers. But this has not been fulfilled by the successive governments and even by this government. So the issue will continue with that. And it is also suggested that instead of slowly and indirectly destroying the APMC regime, what is required is strengthening the existing system. We can strengthen it, APMCs. We can create stricter laws if the laws are violated. But rather than completely destroying it, doesn't hold any significance over here. Reform should be introduced to introduce APMC infrastructure as the small and marginal farmers incapable of attracting corporate traders turn to mandis as their last resort. Better road connectivity, just I'm concluding with, you can say, a speech. These are simple points I have explained a lot. Better road connectivity, transport facilities, climate control storage facilities, electricity supply are also prerequisite for drastic improvements in agriculture, and we all know the significance of that. Okay, so it is not about, see, many a times what we come across is like people saying help the farmers, but we don't need help to the farmers. We need to empower the farmers. Farmer is not a beggar who always has to ask for help and help. Farmer is not a beggar, understand, that it has to always depend on the government and all those things. It is only because the system has made a farmer, the system sees farmer as a beggar, that they are always demanding. We should be thinking about empowering your farmer, and empowering the farmer needs basic infrastructure. Better, simple things are there. So if that would have been done, then obviously we could have, in longer race, we could have not been facing this problem. At least now we should be taking into consideration that in which direction we are going. So the agriculture based on market forces is futile without realistic investment in agriculture investment. Remember that. You have to really invest, and the investment, now the government is trying to get it from the private, but what about the public fundings? Like initially we had infrastructure projects, for example, we developed canals, irrigation facilities and all those things, but since very long time, like I would say 20-30 years, there hasn't been any substantial investment in the agriculture sector, which is required. Additionally, the majority of the farmers cannot contribute meaningfully to market driven agriculture as their land holdings and outputs are small. The slow death of APMC will consequently result in the failure of INAM. That is another point that I have highlighted already. Need to reform the existing APMC markets and sub-markets rather than dismantling it indirectly, and also for the creation of new markets so as to reduce the burden of existing ones. In states like Punjab or in the Maharashtra, you can say, where the issue of farmer suicides is continuously on rise, state intervention gains importance to prevent exploitation by private entities. Remember that. Assurance of a fair price for their produce and reducing indebtedness. Farmers don't demand anything, they just demand and basic infrastructure and a fair price. A fair price. One of the most important steps that needs to be taken is a discussion with the concerned stakeholders. Time-bound, wide-scale consultations to address all concerns regarding the farmer bill is a necessary step in order to conform to the spirit of democracy and cooperative federalism. And to last, I would like to say, climate change and pollution have also negatively impacted crop health, and it is estimated that the production of wheat, paddy, maize, cotton, and potato and other crops is likely to be adversely affected. The wheat production is supposed to fall by 23% by 2050 in absence of proper intervention. So we need an intervention over here. Even the environmental concerns that are arising from agriculture, like the greenhouse gas emissions, stubble burning, and the depletion of underground water table, also contribute to climate change and necessitate reforms in the agriculture practice. Then further, like these are all the things that we have to always every now and then we have to consider. Moreover, immediate action is required to be taken by the government to encourage organic farming, give initiative, incentives, and subsidies for adopting sustainable agriculture practices. The basis of evaluating any policy, friends, remember this line very significantly. The basis for evaluating a policy must be urgency and importance. removing hunger among the poor farmers, pulling them out of the debt traps, ensuring fair remuneration for food produce, maintaining the ecological balance are the more pressing issues than introducing new plans for attracting new investors. We should see what is at the table first, then look at what we should be doing. So there are major problems in the farming sector. So selling the interest of farmers to corporates is not likely to make India Atmanirbhar. So that is the point. And to conclude, basically, I'd like to say agrarian distress has been persistent in India and due to number of factors, including low productivity, lack of storage and transport facilities, heavy indebtedness and fragmented land holdings. Subjecting the fate of farmers to vagaries of market forces cannot be the only way to uplift the agriculture sector. Experience from other nations has revealed that corporatization of agriculture could further instigate the depression of farmers. Replacement of one flawed model with another flawed model is not the solution. The agriculture sector requires stability, whereas the new model will only introduce more price volatility by introducing market forces. So I think you understand. If you're not getting what I am talking, just understand. The agriculture sector requires stability, whereas the new model is bringing into instability. The agriculture sector in India is facing a gruesome problems. Okay, farmers are committing suicide. We have to take that seriously. It is 2008 when P. Sainath reported it, and that led Prime Minister Manmohan Singh to visit those families. I request you all to watch the documentary Nero's Guest, Neroguast, Nero's Guest. It is on the work of P. Sainath with regards to the farmers. Okay, so please do, if you have to be sensitive about the farmers and the suicides and all those things, that documentary is the best form which can make you sensitive towards the issues of the farmers. So we don't need more volatility in the market forces. And even in the existing system, as it will be in the new system, the farmer never gets to decide the price of his farm produce. It is decided by another person for him and is subjected to extreme fluctuations. I don't know whenever this problem is going to be solved, that farmer will decide the produce of his farm. Obviously, he will not be getting that chance in the near future, it seems. But there, like in many years, like with the increasing population and all those figures, I think in the future times, the food will become the priority. And when the food will become the priority, I hope that people, it will be very late for us to realize the importance of farmers. So it is better to realize the importance of farmers now than later. Okay, because in the later stages, the farmers will not stand for us and they will not have the potential to stand for us. So that you have to always consider. So there is an urgent need to address the apprehensions of the concerned stakeholders and to reassess of the existing policies. So friends, with that, I hope you have understood. There have been many articles, everyday articles are coming into newspapers and all those columns with all those things. I have tried to cover as much as possible with every aspect of the law. Hence after, whenever the government and the farmers union came to certain decision, I will take another discussion on that, but that will be just factual based. I hope I have covered all your doubts while teaching, uh, while taking this topic. I don't think anything is left into this. These three acts, individually we have seen them, then their conclusion, then their loopholes, and the conclusion part basically. Even the concept of MSP we have seen, background we have seen. So I hope you have been benefited by this long session, which almost went for 2.5 hours. Okay, so thanks a lot. And now, if you are having any questions, I will take few questions only. But if you have other questions, you can just text me and I will get back to you with the questions, because I think everyone is tired. And we are starting, just one thing, we are starting with our mentorship program from Monday. I have sent for those who are interested, please send the form, filled in form, which has been posted on the Telegram, which has been posted on the WhatsApp group also. Those who are not on the WhatsApp can log in over there. The mentorship program is basically for 200 days, starting off from the Monday, 7th of August to 20th of June, where every day we will be having the lectures and a test, and weekly test also will be there. This is specifically for all those who are going to appear for prelims of 2021. Now is the time that you start preparing for the prelims, and for that I am starting that course. Most probably, I may not be uh, I may not be taking the lectures at Unique, most probably. Henceforth, I am all into master mentor. So if you have any difficulties, any doubts, you can directly contact me, or you can, if I'm not able to reply, I was not able to reply in last 1 month or so because of certain technical and certain medical emergencies, but we are back. From Monday, we are going to begin. I hope it has benefited you. Give you feedback. I will be sharing this on the YouTube also. I would be grateful if you share it to your friends, uh, because as I told you, quality, personalized quality, and affordable learning is my objective. Affordable. It should be affordable, and everyone should be able to get the education. No one should be deprived out of it. So that's why always I repeatedly say, don't worry about the fees for the mentorship program. Just join it. My objective will be to help you as much as possible for qualifying the prelims. So thank you very much. Do share it with your friends if you like it. If you like it, no compulsion. Thank you. Yeah, thank you and good night.